Dun, dun, dun. Are we texting? Come in, you may enter.
You have to do
You literally have to.
all this other stuff first.
Mike's around, okay.
So, yep.
I'd like to call the meeting to order, special meeting for City of Fraser, Thursday, August 4th, 2022. Apologize for starting late because of some IT difficulties, and to call the meeting to order at 7:48 PM.
6.
6:48
I
PM.
just want you to know, for the record. Oh, no, we're not going to do
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. We have a special meeting tonight. We are going to be doing interviews for the Department of Public Safety's director's position, and these are the interviews. We have 4 candidates tonight. And at this time, I'd like to call on Amy.
We got to do roll call first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Councilmember Bransky.
Present.
Councilmember Blanky.
Present.
Mayor Carnegie.
Here.
Councilmember Kolka.
Here.
Councilmember Odell.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Shortett.
Present.
Councilmember Sutherland.
Present.
That's why I don't like to get started late. I always get off track.
It's okay, Mike.
It's all right.
We'll
There's enough
guide
of
you.
us. Yeah, there's enough of us.
I know. At this time, I'd like to call on Councilwoman Amy Baranski to just review the kind of process that we've gone through so far, and this is at the final stages of that process. Ms. Baranski, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we've started this process almost 2 years ago now, and we've been very diligent and deliberate. It's probably been about 3 months ago, we posted to interview both internal and external candidates. We had them they submitted resumes. We reviewed the resumes to determine qualifications. We had 17 candidates apply that met the qualifications. We did video questions. We then, a subcommittee consisting of Councilmember Sutherland, Councilmember Patrice, myself, the city manager, and the assistant city manager did interviews. We then narrowed it down further. We sent the top 4 candidates to an assessment center, which was an all-day outside agency that my best way to describe it is it's sort of like a day in the life situation where they did role-playing and situations, and they were graded and evaluated on their answers and their responses. And we are now here with our top 4 candidates for council's consideration for hiring for the director position. And our first candidate is Robert Trupino.
Hey, Robert.
Hi.
Thanks for
Joining
having me.
us?
Sure, Robert. How are you tonight?
I'm very good. How about yourself?
Great. Thank you for coming in. Briefly introduce yourself, highlighting items that may not be fully reflected in your resume or the video questions, and explain your motivation for applying for the position with the City of Fraser.
Okay. So I thought you might ask that question. So I come to you. I have 28 years of law enforcement experience. The last 16 years in a police supervisory role. That includes the last 3.5 years as the chief of police in the city of Memphis. I did my career in Shelby Township, spent 24 years there, so I'd like to talk. I'm sorry.
Nope, you're good. Someone? Nope.
Spent 24 years there. I thought I'd like to kind of step back to that because I really think that's where I built my foundation. Really prepared me for being here today in my current position as chief of police. So you have my resume. You've had a chance to review it. I'm not going to go through and list all the things I've done in my career. There's a lot of things there, and I could go into a lot of detail, but I'd like to just kind of sum it up for you. So I retired in 2018 from the Shelby Township Police Department as a lieutenant. I had a 24-year wonderful run. It was a great community, great department. Everybody, they love their police, they love their fire. It was a great place to grow up. You know, I started there, I was a 22-year-old kid, and it was a great place to spend a career. Probably one of the hardest things I ever had to do was actually penning my intent to retire letter to HR. There was a lot of tears shed that week. It was a tough decision, but looking back on my career in Shelby Township, like I said, I really believe that's where it kind of cemented the foundation for where I'm at today. I had the opportunity, I retired as a lieutenant, so obviously I had the opportunity to occupy multiple ranks and positions through my career. And looking back, I think I really had a good opportunity in the positions I held and the time frames I held them. So I spent 12 and a half years as a patrol officer, about 7.5 years as a sergeant and a first-line supervisor, and my last 4 years as a lieutenant shift commander, commander in charge of training for the agency. And again, looking back, I think that really made a big difference. If you would have asked me back then, I would have wanted to get promoted sooner. But because of numbers, you get bottlenecked up and there isn't some movement in the organization. I took a lot of promotional tests. I died a lot at number 1 or 2. It was just the way it was. But again, now that I have hindsight and I'm looking back, I'm glad I spent the time I did in those positions. I really had the opportunity to hone my skills, my craft, I guess. This is not an easy job. Not everybody can do it. And I think the time I spent in those respective positions and the roles and responsibilities that came with it really prepared me. And as I built on from one position to the next, one rank to the next, leading me ultimately to here today. So I look back and I think that I was fortunate. I see today in a lot of departments, officers are getting promoted too soon, whether it's formal promotion to like sergeant, first line, supervisor positions, or taking on roles like FTO, informal supervisor, where at the end of the day, they're responsible for other people. It's a big shift. When you're a patrol officer, you're responsible for yourself. Once you move into a supervisory role, that first line supervisor, now you're responsible for everybody around you. It's kind of like parenting. Once you have kids, your whole world changes. Now you're a forever babysitter. Well, in police work, law enforcement, firefighting, it's the same thing. Once you step into that role, you never look back. Now you are responsible for everyone around you. So I see too many officers being promoted too soon, time and grade requirements being waived. Guy with the most time standing in the room, you're FTO tonight. And I just shudder at the thought of that, because this is a tough job and nobody should bear that responsibility that's not ready. So I was ready, and I spent the time, and I think I've earned it. So I worked in Shelby Township, 36 square miles, large city, large organization, about 80 officers, 80,000 residents when I left. So I did a lot of things. I experienced a lot of things. I gained a lot of knowledge, did a lot of training. It's law enforcement. You can say every single day, I'd never thought I'd see that until the next day, and then you see something else that makes you say, I never thought I'd see that again. But I had the opportunity working in the township and doing the things I've done. Not only did I have the opportunity, I was surrounded by great people, great peers, great command staffs, but I got a chance to experience all kinds of people come and go over the years. Spending 24 years somewhere, I got to watch multiple administrations from afar. I got to be part of administrations as a command officer. I worked with chiefs that came from within the agency that had spent their careers there, and I worked with chiefs that had come from outside and brought their own ideals and traits and leadership qualities to the agency. And what I've always tried to do is I've always tried to model myself after the people that I think do a good job, that they're successful at what they do, and kind of toss the bad stuff aside. And I'm not going to say they were all great, but for the most part, we had some great people. And I consider myself fortunate. Working in that large agency and the experience that I gained, I really consider myself fortunate. So fast forward 2019, I was retired for about 6 months. I did all the cops retirement stuff. I grew the retirement beard, got all the stuff done around the house, felt sorry for myself for a couple months, and I realized I need to get back into it. I retired very young. I have young kids at home. I still have young kids at home. I have a lot of training, education, knowledge, experience to offer to someone, and I knew that I'd be back into it. I think I could be a valuable asset to an organization. So I was fortunate enough in March of 2019 to be selected as Chief of Police in the city of Memphis. Stark contrast in the city of Memphis from Shelby Township. Large department, lots of people, lots of resources, lots of money. Small department and none of the above. So that was a stark contrast. It was a real eye-opener. I knew it would be a challenge coming in. I knew I had a lot of work to do, but it really was a shock. Coming into the department, I quickly realized that no matter how big your police department is, it doesn't matter. 80-man department going to an 8-officer department. The requirements, the mandates, everything was the same to keep the doors open as a compliant, functional police department. The difference was you didn't have layers of people, command, bureaus, records. You didn't have all those support staff to help you do those things. So as Chief of Police in Memphis, I have to do all of those things in addition to being Chief of Police. So I learned that pretty quick coming in. It's just part of the game. I wear many hats on every given day. I come in, I'm the officer of the day, I'm the detective of the day, I'm the training officer, I'm the FTO, I'm the background investigator, I'm the IT person, I'm the on-call supervisor for the officers on the road, I'm the mechanic, I'm the janitor sometimes, and every once in a while I get to be chief of police. I have to interact, I'm the point person with city council, with business leaders, community members. Everything falls on my shoulders or a chief's shoulders in a small agency. It's just the way it is. But I took it on. It was a challenge. I enjoy it. I've been really, really striving at making the department as professional and functional as possible. Again, while the requirements are the same, I think that the outcome is the same. There's no reason why your officers can't go out there and be professional and competent in what they do. It doesn't matter how big the agency is. You still need to have that. You need to instill that in your employees. So you really need that buy-in in the agency. So last 3.5 years in Memphis, at Chief of Police, that's what I've been working towards, is making it that functional, professional police department. From bringing in best practice policies to the agency, rules and regulations, empowering the officers to do more, training them more, getting them more involved in the agency. I've replaced every single piece of equipment in the agency to make sure that they had the stuff they needed to do the job. And it goes beyond the material side of that. Obviously, I want my officers, I want them prepared to defend themselves or protect themselves, protect the public, and do their jobs. But the psychological factor of when I came in, of sending officers out with equipment that didn't work, was non-functional, was old, was outdated. And that goes everything from weapon system to computers to the cars to the building. Building's not comfortable. I mean, they seem small maybe, and they seem materialistic, but it goes beyond that. I can't send officers out and have them go out there and work with integrity and honesty and professionalism if I send them the message that they're not good enough for me to provide them the equipment they need. So to me, I looked at it more, people say, well, it's just buying stuff. First of all, I had established a rapport with city council, them to trust me that I was in charge of the department and I would not let them down, and that my decisions, that I had to convince them to stand behind me. So they obviously hold the checkbook. So they had to entrust me to allow me to spend that money to buy those things, to implore or get the officers to buy into that stakeholder mindset that I really wanted out of them, to go out there and be the best they can. So that's what I've been working at for 3.5 years. I know it's a long answer to a short question, but 3.5 years, I think we're in a good place. I think I've taken the agency about as far as I can take it with the resources I have available. I'm very proud of where we're at. I would consider it a turnkey agency for the next person coming in behind me. I've done all the heavy lifting. I've fought all the uphill battles, and the next person, they can come in, and I would feel comfortable handing over the reins where we're at right now. I'm very proud of that. So why I'm here today, I think that I'm ready for the next step in my career. Like I said, you can see by my resume and my education and my knowledge and my experience and my training, I've done a lot of things in my law enforcement career, and I'm ready to move on to the next challenge. And City of Fraser is, to me, perfect step for size-wise, the community size, the geographic location, the number of officers, because I think I can provide you I'm a very valuable asset to you, but it's got to work for me too, and I think I'm ready to take that on, and I think you will not be disappointed. I will not let you down. Let me put it that way.
Great. Thank you for that answer. Councilman O'Dell, I'll let you go next.
Okay. Thanks for being here. Robert, as a director, you might have to implement policies that may be good for the department and city, but unpopular with the employees. What would your approach be to handle a situation like this? Or can you give me an example in your experience where you had to take such an action?
I can tell you that a lot of policies, procedures, change really is not widely accepted sometimes. It's just the nature of the business. From a sergeant, from a lieutenant, it doesn't matter from the top down. It's really about the messenger, not the message. I've seen policies come down. I've seen the person that have brought those policies down or that changed down over the years. Same message, wrong person to deliver the message, really. Just like the relationships or the interaction or the communication skills that's needed to do things like a director position, to interact with city council members and get things done, the same thing goes for when you're dealing with your employees. You really need everything that somebody may perceive as change, or maybe they don't like it up front. You got to sell it. I mean, really, that's what it boils down to. You got to sell it, because you wouldn't be doing it unless there was a good reason for it. I think one of the biggest issues, or one of the reasons why people resent the message, It's not only the messenger or personally sometimes, but it's that it's not explained, it's not thoroughly explained, or there's no reason why you should do it because I said so, you should do it because we want to go this direction. No, you need to take the time to explain to your personnel why you're doing what you're doing. You need to shine the positive outcome or aspects of it, and you have to listen to them. You have to field some of their concerns or questions if there is some negative response to it. So I've done that over the years, and again, it depends on your position. A lot of times at a sergeant, like what we're talking about, if it's a full-blown policy change, or maybe it's just a change of operations, maybe at the shift level, and you got to bring it back to the agency, or to the members of the agency. And sometimes at those different levels, it's viewed differently. So I've done it as a sergeant, I've done it as a lieutenant, I've done it as the chief of police. I think I've done a very good job. I would consider one of my strengths is my communication skills and my ability to interact with people, from dealing with victims to suspects to city council members to business leaders. I have a very good communication skills. So that's no different when dealing with officers, peers, subordinates, when you're trying to put something in place that maybe they're not crazy about up front. So I have no concerns about that whatsoever. I don't know, I hope that answers your question, but thank you.
Councilwoman Sutherland.
I have a follow-up question to that.
Yes.
So you've taken all of the time and the opportunity and done all the legwork to sell it,
Yep.
right? And everybody's on board,
Yeah.
then it fails. What do you do then? How do you handle that?
Well,
From a change management perspective and dealing with that you've sold it as it's
Yep.
going to be the right idea.
Yep.
It didn't work. Now what's your message? Like, how do you rebound from that?
well, I think and listen, not everything works. Not everything hits the first time. Not everything is 100% effective or works to the level that you thought it would work, because a lot of it's guessing. You take best practice. You talk to people around you in the business, other communities, other departments. You do all your homework ahead of time. It's the knee-jerk reaction things, the because I want to or because I said so. Like there's no place for that in any business, and there certainly is not a place for that in a law enforcement agency. But you also have to have some humility too. You have to realize that sometimes you didn't make the right decision, sometimes you didn't make the right call, but you need to take responsibility for that. Sometimes you have to walk it back, sometimes you have to revisit it, you have to come at it a different way. I think if you're not willing to do that, or you're not open for that, you probably aren't the messenger that should be selling it in the first place. I really do believe that. I've seen things succeed and I've seen things fail. And again, it's not even about failure. It's best intent. Sometimes it just doesn't work out like you planned. You're dealing with people. That's just the way it is.
Okay, thank you.
Next.
I'm like, I don't know what order we're going in, so.
Thank you for coming today.
Okay.
I appreciate
That's
it
it?
very much.
No.
We have more questions. It's
Yeah,
just
more
my
questions.
turn now.
He's like, well,
It's just that was easy.
Not gonna be that easy.
That was
like,
like,
quickest
you're
interview.
done sort of vibe, but go ahead.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having
Your
me.
resume is outstanding, I think. I
you.
personally think. I really like it a lot, and I really was impressed with the things that you said and the video interviews as well. I know that, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, because I know that the vetting process has been pretty grueling. So I just have one question for you, and that is, so you had said when you started working for the city of Memphis that when you got there was a lot of work to do, that sort of thing. It sounded like when you said that you already kind of knew like what needed to be done before you even got hired, correct?
I did.
Okay, so now my question is if you were to be given the job for our chief in the city of Fraser for our public safety department, what do you see your first 90 days look like?
So obviously, I have not studied all the intricate details of the operation of the Fraser Public Safety Department. I've heard things, but you know how that goes. Rumor mills and gossip and everything else. So I'm really trying, and the reason I knew, I live close to the city of Memphis, I'm in that area, and being in law enforcement for all the years, you hear things, you know things. I knew a lot of the issues that they had prior to going in, just from being in the business, okay? City of Fraser, I've heard some stuff. I know people that have worked here. I know people that have retired from here. But as far as the intricate details, I didn't even really want to know at this point. Coming in here, getting into this assessment process and this interview process, Part of the assessment, if you're not familiar with it, is that you need to basically come in and give your ideas, some things that you think you would do if you were to walk in the door. But it doesn't necessarily have to be real, right? Because you don't have all the real information to base it on. So I come in with, like anybody else new to any experience, is I'm completely open-minded. I have wide open eyes, but I'm an A-type personality person. I really need to have my ducks in a row, my I's dotted, my T's crossed. It's just how I function. So for me to grasp the knowledge that's necessary to do what needs to be done is huge. I mean, that to me is priority number one. So if I'm coming into the Fraser Department of Public Safety, my first day on a job, I have a few things. Do we have any, in their more operation, do we have any pending litigation? Do we have any grievances up in the air? Do we have any lawsuits, any litigation pending? I need to take a look at policy and procedure. Are we at best practice right now, or are we dealing with outdated things? Those are priority things that I need to see first. I can get into the nitty-gritty of some of the finer things when we're talking about from the operational side as far as the officers and shifts and hours and, I need to take a look at the budget. I want to see our staffing levels. I already kind of covered, it's not that I'm coming in 100% blind. I have an idea I've already confirmed what some of the staffing levels are, what the intentions moving forward, that they want to kind of keep it that way. No real intention to cut or any drastic slashing by attrition or otherwise. So I've clarified a few of those things. But those are some of the things that stand out at me. Again, when I come into an organization, I want to make sure we're functional and professional, but sometimes you need to start at the ground level and make sure the core things are being done before you can get into the nice to haves, address the need to have. So that's my priority list, is hitting all those need to haves, or at least need to address, and then just start chipping away at them, like I've been doing it at the agency I'm at now. So I hope that answers your
Yeah,
question.
it did. Thank you very much.
Councilwoman Shernick.
Okay. Let's see. Because we're kind of skipping around. Because he's already kind of answered some of these. Well, I think maybe you can probably expound on what challenges do you see on an individual level for yourself coming in as the role of director for the public safety, and how would you address and overcome those challenges?
Okay, so, I think the gorilla in the room is that I don't have any fire experience, okay? I've not been to the fire academy. I'm not a trained firefighter. However, I have been in law enforcement, public safety, public service my entire working career. I've been in positions of authority. I've been in positions where I have to make decisions. I have to represent the agency. I am fully competent that the fire side of things will not be an issue, okay? Me personally, in my own capabilities. So that was one of the challenges. I had the opportunity. When I graduated from high school, I was going to be a firefighter. My grandpa's a career firefighter for the Detroit Fire Department. When I graduated from high school, I did all the paperwork. I was going to go to the Detroit Fire Department. My grandfather, ironically, talked me out of it. He wanted me to go to school, get an education. He was a big education guy. He really was, he presented the fact that he never had an opportunity in his life. So I went to college, and when I came out, I went the law enforcement route, not the fire route. I think he was proud, but he was a little disappointed. So that, I understand how that like the pride in the fire department, how it works. I worked shoulder to shoulder with firefighters in Shelby Township my entire career. We were fortunate. We had a large fire department full-time. Every single day we went to work, we worked shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand with our firefighters, all the way from a patrol officer on the road responding to calls to administrative issues later on in my career. I understand how firefighting works. I don't know every little in and out, the little thingy-doos and doohickeys that they use, but I am absolutely 100% committed. Like I told you, I'm an A-type personality. I refuse to just kind of rest on my laurels or somebody else's knowledge. So I'm gonna make myself as knowledgeable as possible on the fire side of things, the fire administration side. I understand you have some very qualified people here, some very good, highly trained firefighters, and I'm going to lean on them. And I know that that's going to be a little bit of a challenge for me initially. I'm going to lean on them for their experience, their knowledge, their expertise. But I will tell you that is not where I'm going to. I can't. In my own head, that does not allow me to get away with that. So I'm going to educate myself in that so I can speak intelligently on the firefighting side of this operation. I will fairly represent the city, both from a public safety, from the fire and police side. I have no concerns or questions about me being able to do that, even with my limited fire knowledge, to represent the department and the city in the fire respect. So That probably is one of the biggest challenges that I see. The police stuff, I can handle that stuff. You know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilwoman Blanky.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight. As I listen to your story, in my mind, this is not on paper anywhere. In my mind, I'm making a time frame. I'm making a historical time frame. I would like to know, I'm assuming you went, there was no record of it, but did you go to the police academy?
Yes.
Okay. So back then, as you recall, and I recall, when we used to interview here, there was a line of 30, 40 young men, such as yourself. And women. Well, not as many, no.
Not too many women.
Hey, Patrice, this is my story.
Sorry.
So anyway, I can recall that. I worked here. I saw the lines. And I saw many, many people, come here to apply back then when they were, to me, you're still a kid, but, 21, 22 is
Right.
young. And so I guess, okay, in your mind, you had, of course, aspirations, and you're right. You have, personally, I know, you have to be a certain person, a personality, a caring person, a good person to do that job. I get that. So now my question is, almost a quarter of a century later, and you've done so many wonderful things, and I thank you. What is your mentality now? When you compare that young man that walked in for your first position, coming out of the academy, a Masonic, right? Did you go with the what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I give you a story real quick first before that?
I love stories, sure.
Drive your point home?
Patrice, can we tell a story? Okay, go,
So
Robert.
here's my story really quick. 1993, I went to the police academy. It was a different time back then. You're absolutely correct.
I'm well
There's
aware.
very few jobs and a whole lot of people looking for them.
Exactly.
So I went to college, got my associate's degree in criminal justice, and then I put myself as a pre-service candidate through the police academy. I borrowed $4,000 from my grandparents so that I could pay my car payment and my bills while I was in the academy because I couldn't work for 16 weeks. So I put myself through the academy because back then there was so many candidates, departments didn't have any reason to sponsor you through academy and spend the money.
Exactly.
They had people coming out of the woodwork that wanted these jobs. So I went put myself through academy in 1993. I was hired by the River Rouge Police Department in like April of 1990. Geez, you're right. It has been a long time. 1994. I graduated in December of '93. Spent about a month there, and the way it worked back then is once you start taking these tests, it was like everybody called at once, right?
Right.
So you would take the first job that came along back then because you had to, because they were so few and far between. So I took the job in River Rouge. I was a kid from Warren. That was a different world for me. And shortly thereafter, the city of Ferndale called and asked if I wanted a job, and I quickly went to Ferndale. And then after that, the Shelby Township Police Department called, and I had taken that test prior to, and I went to Shelby Township. I knew I wanted to live out in the country. I had this picture as a kid growing up in Warren that I wanted to live in the country. I wanted to have a pond. I wanted to raise my kids out there. I knew that that was my goal, even as a young man. And I wanted to get as far north as I could because I knew that's where I wanted to really settle my roots. So you talk about 30, 40 people in line, and I'm not patting myself on the back here. I tested against 1,200 people for the Shelby Township Police Department. 3 days of testing at Eisenhower Police Department. They hired 3 of us, and I was number 1. So I understand how that works. Now, you're asking me what I think about today. I don't like a lot of things that have happened in law enforcement. I certainly don't like the perception that is out there of law enforcement and the people that do it. I think it's unfair. And I will tell you that sometimes it's hard not to be jaded doing this job. I don't care how good you are. I don't care how patient you are. It is very, very difficult when everything is against you sometimes to keep a positive attitude. But when as I was going out of my career, and I had a lot of younger kids coming in, new hires walking in the door, it's a different generation now. It's a different type of person taking on this job than when I started. And while it's a long time ago, it's not that long ago. And you understand that you have to kind of change your I don't think we should have to change everything for everybody else, because there's still some things I think that part of this job and the integrity that goes along with it, you need to maintain a certain line that you can't cross. And unfortunately, places are crossing that because they need people so bad. It's a battle sometimes to keep positive. It's a battle sometimes to not get so disgusted or discouraged by what's going on. And it may not even be you. Every time there's a ruling, a judgment, a court case, something that affects a police officer somewhere in this country, it hits you personally. You sit there and say, why am I being painted with this broad brush? This is not how I operate. I worked 24 years with people. I never witnessed, I never saw, I never experienced things that people are accusing people of doing in other places, and then assuming we all act that way. It's very difficult. So I would say, was it taking the wind out of my sails a little bit from that kid that loved to go out there and lock up bad guys? Yeah, a little bit. But I realize my job in that now, and my position, my role in this stage of my life, I'm 50 years old. I have 4 kids. I've gone through life changes. I can look at things differently now, and I have to appreciate them for what they are. And look at things from a broader scope, I guess. And that's what kind of keeps me sane doing this job. Because there isn't a days goes by that I don't get a phone call, have somebody come in the door, and you're just like, I can't listen to this anymore. But you do, you do.
Wow.
So, because I think it's important. Somebody needs to do it.
Right?
We all have days like
Thank you, thank you.
Every day for me. I can so relate to you right now. It's a daily event.
Councilwoman Sutherland.
I had a totally different question that I was going to ask, but your passion in your last answer actually
Okay.
made me want
Is
to.
the question easier or harder?
They're probably equal. But anyway, so with the perception of law enforcement by some changing
Yes.
over the past few years, we'll say, what role do you see yourself playing if you were to be offered the position of director to come into the community and change that perception? Like, how do you see yourself playing an important role in that brush, that broad stroke brush that you were talking about, that our public safety department maybe wouldn't be necessarily?
Well, I think that from what I've been told, again, the little bit of research and information I've been provided, the city of Fraser has a very, very strong backing from their residents, right? A lot of what goes on today is not here necessarily. You're right. The problem is people that watch TV and they hear things, and social media is just, it's one of our biggest enemies, because you can't get ahead of anything. It doesn't matter right or wrong anymore. You're being judged before anybody even knows what happened. So it's no different than the positive kind of spin that I put on things when I was in Shelby Township, or how I do my job now as chief of police. I stand behind law enforcement police officers wholeheartedly. And I have no room for the police officers that abuse their powers or their positions or that are out there doing bad things. I don't mix words with that. So as director of Fraser, it'd be no different than my police chief Dow. My job is to promote the department, to promote the reputation, to let people know that this again, I'll go back to what I said, a functional, professional police department that you can rely on, that you can come to with issues, and we're going to do everything we can in our power to send that person away. However, whether it's the contact at their house that the officers make or the shift commanders at the front desk make, send them away with a positive response, a positive contact. Now, everybody's not going to be always happy. You would be surprised how many people, as a shift commander in Shelby Township, there wasn't a day that went by that I had people come in and make accusations, claims, false claims about things that I just know flat out did not happen. I couldn't even tell you how many times I would bring those individuals into my office and I would just play back the body cam video for them. And it was nothing as they described, right? I know that that's part of the deal, and you're never going to get rid of that. You're never going to change that. You're never going to get rid of it, no matter how much your community supports you, no matter how many people love you, no matter how you promote the positivity of your agency. You're never going to get rid of that small fraction that are going to do that or behave that way. So you keep plugging away at it. You keep trying to maintain a positive attitude and represent the department as best as possible. Because reputations, like I was telling you, gossip, rumors, reputation, word gets around pretty fast, not only at the agency level, but at the community level. So, and not everybody's perfect. There's going to be mistakes made. I think you need to be transparent as a leader of an agency. If your officers or your people or your department made a mistake, you need to stand up and take responsibility. It's a mistake. We're not perfect. You need to tout the good things and you need to be honest about the bad things. And that's just part of part of moving forward, you know, with in this kind of business. So, I mean, that's how my take on that, so.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you. I've worked for Fraser Public Safety for 34 years as a firefighter,
That's what I heard.
and been worked under 5 directors since I've been here. And in the old days, we actually had divisions like the Comet, undercover drugs, all these
Specialty
different
bureaus or
units, all
assignments,
special
yeah.
units. What could you think you could do, or how do you think you could come with ideas to bring maybe some of those important units back?
So, Fraser's not unique to that. I mean, a lot of places have had to cut out bureaus and positions, not only whether it's budget related or just really you can't get anybody to come work anymore or stay. So everybody's kind of facing that uphill battle, the recruiting issues of getting people in the door and then retaining them, getting them to stay. You know, looking at the little bit that I know about the operation here, I know you run an 8-hour shift. I know roughly the staffing levels that you provide. It'd be simple for me to say I'm going to go to 12-hour shifts and give you more bodies, more bang for your buck, right? I can do the same amount of service with 3/4 of the people. I can take those extra people and I can put them into maybe starting up some of those bureaus or assignments that will provide that service to the community that we're not doing now or maybe it's gone by the wayside. That's the easy answer to that. I'm a little biased. I worked in a 12-hour department my entire career. I did my master's thesis on public safety, shift durations, medical, police, fire, anybody in the public service. So I'm a little biased in that. I do think it's a better functional operational way of doing things, especially in a department this size. The way they operate here with the fire side of things.
You mean 12 hours? You mean the 12 hours?
The 12 hours, yes. In the public safety realm.
I want to make sure I was,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No,
It'd be hard to find most public safety departments are 12 hours now. You'd be hard to find an 8-hour shift. I'm not saying it's the end all be all. I'm not saying everybody's going to love it and it's going to be, you know, you're going to have all this effort or extra people to do things. But you will, just by simple math, you are going to free up bodies. You are going to free up days to do other things. So whether that's bringing back those bureaus or those specialty assignments that we need to do, even if it frees up a person to dedicate to something like Comet, where you maybe don't have enough to do your own in-house unit, but you can take part in the county unit or the MSP unit. You know, there's a whole bunch of bureaus out there that the officers or the departments can't afford or they don't have the manpower to have their own anymore. So they send officers to represent. So, you know, going to a 12-hour shift, I think, is a step in the right direction, at least entertaining it to free up those bodies. I'll tell you another issue with public safety that seems to be a concern is you have a bunch of people on one side that want to be police officers, you have a bunch of people on the other side that want to be firefighters, and in the middle you got this little group of people that want to be public safety officers. We're already up against that, kind of behind the 8 ball as far as hiring, as far as getting people to come work, right? It's just the way it is. And I tell you that over my years, part of the problem was people were concerned about, I'm not a firefighter, I don't do enough firefighting, I don't have enough firefighter training. You're a police officer first, you're a firefighter second, it's just the nature of the business. It's a proactive and it's a reactive job. Doesn't mean one's more important than the other, it's just the way it is. So officers that would leave the public safety after they get into it, or would never want to start it because they don't get enough training, or when a fire does happen, they actually have to do something, they don't feel comfortable. Another advantage to that 12-hour shift and possibly addressing some of those things would be freeing up more time for training. I mean, I think you're doing 1 day a month now, mandatory fire training. I'd love to see 2 or 3 days. Going to a 12-hour shift, you just freed up 6 to 7 working days for each officer on the department, roughly. You know, from a 20-day, 8-hour schedule to a 12-hour shift. So those are things I think that are important, and they go beyond that. They go deeper than that. They go into recruiting and retention and that buy-in or that stake. Those are all things that once you get over the few people that probably aren't going to like it or the people that have been around a while, people coming in the door, they do want more time off. That's attractive to them. I would hate to lose good qualified people that might come here but go elsewhere because of a schedule or because they don't want to stay because they're not comfortable with the firefighting side of things. So those are things I think that can really be addressed, and that's one way of doing it. I don't know if it's the absolute fix, but it certainly is a start in the right direction, I think.
So with your position, how you talk, so what's your position on like paid on-call firefighters, explorers, reserve officers, those types of divisions?
I will tell you, I'm not a huge proponent of reserves, but I am a huge proponent of the cadet program. I think that bring in a cadet. This is not new. I mean, Livonia, I mean, cities, Canton, these cities have been doing this. Novi, they've been at cadet programs for 30 years. I mean, before I started in this business. It's an effective way to get at the ground level, to reach out. We're having a hard time recruiting people. We're having a hard time convincing people that they should come do this for a living. You know, we got to remind them it's a noble profession. It's something that you'll be proud of doing. But those numbers are shrinking, and those people are going and doing other things. So for me, the cadet program, and I will say, again, I'm a little bit, I guess I'm not looking at it completely fairly, but Shelby Township has a cadet program, and ours is relatively new in terms of lifespan. We implemented it right before I left, but it's been highly effective. Reaching out to the kids graduating college, the kids not quite sure what they're going to do, maybe they're starting community college, even coming out of high school thinking about public safety, it gets them at the ground level, it gets them in the door, they get a chance to witness what this is really about. It's not CSI, it's not the shows they see on TV, they get to see it in real life and decide if it's really for them. To me, it's a win-win. There isn't much cost to it. You don't have time invested in them. You're not sending them to the academy and sending them through an FTO and you're outfitting them. You're spending all this time, money, and energy and resources on them to find out, I really don't want to do this. So to me, that cadet program gives them an opportunity to see if it's what they want to do, and it gives us an opportunity as an agency to decide if they're an employee for us, to evaluate them, see if they're going to fit, if they're going to work out. So to me, it's a win-win from both sides. There's very little investment in it. It's an idea, it's a thought. I've never been a big fan of the reserve officers. Most departments that have reserve officers are working to get rid of them. And the reason is because the training that's available, it's hard to manage, it's hard to keep track of. To me, it's a huge liability. And unless you're really, really gonna kind of drill down and keep everybody up to speed on all their training and things they need to do, they just show up once every 6 months and you put them out at a fair or a parade. Well, that one time something bad happens. And that officer is not prepared, not trained. Maybe they've been doing it too long. That's real stuff. And to me, that's a liability that's unnecessary. I've never been a fan of that. Paid on-call firefighting, you know I'm not a firefighter if you had to ask me a fire question.
I didn't have to ask you.
I've been told you obviously want to retain your public safety model, right? You want to stay cross-trained police fire. It's been around a long time in the city. It works. You're paid on-call firefighters. The way you're doing it works. Mm-hmm. So I have to dig a little more into it. Where I work now, we have a volunteer fire department. I worked in Shelby. We had a full-time, huge fire department. They had everything, all the toys, all the stuff. In Memphis, they have a volunteer fire department. And it's tough. It's a challenge during the day when everybody's at their regular jobs. You can't get people to come in. You know, they'll all tone out after 5, but before that, it's slim pickings. Is that the best way? I don't know. And they've tried other things and tried to come up with a better way. Short of having a full-time fire department, I don't know if there is a better way, to be honest with you. You would know better than I do with 35 years.
Yeah, no, I know guys at both, a lot of at Shelby. I know a lot of
It's a difficult thing to do, you know? You're not a huge community, but you're big enough and where you're located, to me, that's a real concern. You know, I'm more rural where I'm at, and I think it probably works a little better there, but it works here, and you guys have been doing it. So I definitely want to kind of dig in and see all the inner workings of that, like I had said.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just keeping our eye on the time, we wanted to leave a few minutes in case you had any questions. We just have a few minutes left in your interview time, so I didn't want to cut anyone off, but unfortunately,
Just gonna say, Mr.
we
Ordonez,
have
just real quick,
4 to go, and everyone only gets 45 minutes, and you're like me, and we love to talk, so.
That's what I always-
You got a quick one, or?
To do with law.
I don't know if it'd be a quick one, but it's kind of following up with what Ms. Blanky and Ms. Sutherland were talking about, and just sometimes employees can become, complacent at their job if they've been there for a while, and maybe develop some bad work habits or attitudes for a variety of reasons. They're burned out, they're overworked, whatever. What would be your managerial approach to ensure an employee doesn't become like a bad apple because of this attitude? What would your management style be so it doesn't affect the morale of the rest of the?
It's not what it would be, it's what it is. Honestly, again, I've been a supervisor in a supervisory role for 16 years, both at the first line supervision and ultimately at shift commander. So, and a chief. I mean, I forget about that part. It's the same. Nothing's changed. So to me, again, I was surrounded by people that did things differently, had different leadership approaches. They had different management styles, different supervisor styles. To me, I always tried to, like I said, pick and choose what works, right? To me, if you were to go by the textbook and look at the definition of leadership, right, I think what most characterizes me would be more of a transitional leader. Right? Empowering your employees, reminding them, letting them know that they are truly important to the organization. They have a real stake in what goes on, and that you need them to succeed. Right? So you support them, you give them everything they need to make the best of themselves. You're going to get this type of job depending on the person, because some people, they choose their own misery, right? They're working night shift and they hate it, but they won't go to day shift because they don't want to give up the shift differential. So some people like that are hard to reach and they're hard to change. But really, I think the key is I'll go back to my example of that first line supervisor. At that level, that's the important. That's the person that's out there day to day, shoulder to shoulder with these officers. They're the huge example that needs to be set in the organization. They need to lead. And when you start seeing some of those signs of that burnout or that they're up against the wall, you need to do everything you can, whether it's convince them to go do something else, give them opportunities, bureaus, assignments, give them responsibilities. Make them feel like they still are important. If they feel like all they do is go out and take runs for 12 hours and then go home, and it doesn't matter, because if they don't do it, somebody else will do it, they're going to start hitting that wall and they're going to start feeling that burnout. But if you embrace them and bring them into the organization and make them feel that they're an integral part of it and that it can't function without them, just like they can't function without it, that's the key, is to keeping them motivated. When they want to come for training, maybe it's not something you deem as necessary, but they really want to do it, or they're really showing motivation, they really want to learn, or they really want to brush up their skills. You send them to the training. Those are the kind of things you need to do to keep things fresh, because I don't care, especially people that they choose to not change shifts, maybe they choose not to seek promotions, right? So they're deciding that they don't want to move up or they don't want to take on new roles or responsibilities, but yet they're going to complain that they're doing the same thing. That to me is the biggest example of the people that fall into the category you just described, and I work with lots of them. And nothing frustrating more. You try to convince them to take the test. I'm not going to pass it, or I don't want to be responsible for other people. All right, then stop complaining about what you do then. So to me, that's the key. That's my leadership style. It's not what I would do here. That's how I do things. That's how I've always done things, and I would continue to do that here. So.
Well, we just hit our 45 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, probably, could we start at 7:50? I wrote it down. Do you have any questions for us?
I just wonder, are we going to go on a couple more months with this process?
No.
It's, no, I don't.
Agenda
I don't have any
item
questions.
B. Take an agenda on the way out.
Nope, I've asked Sarah a few things. You guys are going to pick who you pick. All I can say is you will not be disappointed. You give me the opportunity to lead this organization. I do not disappoint. I will not let you down. You will be able to lay your head down at night, and rest assured this city and this department's in good hands. Other than that, you make your decision. I don't have any other questions at this point.
Great.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Did a nice job.
Thank you.
Yes. Then you better run. Okay. You need to the ladies need to take a.
All right, let's take a 2-second break.
Have a 12 break.
Quick.
Okay, we're going, I guess.
punching bag at work. It was funny, though.
Okay, we're on.
All right.
Good evening, Eric. How are you doing tonight?
Pretty good.
Good. Thank you for coming in and sitting down with us tonight. I know we all know you, but we'll go through this process, and if you can just briefly introduce yourself, because obviously we're live, and highlighting items that may not be fully reflected in your resume or the video questions. Explain your motivation for applying for the position with Fraser.
Motivation for applying for the position. I've been with this department for 28 years since April. I love this department. I like the city. I love the citizens of the city. It's been fun. It's been a great career. Because of that, I see an opportunity to move forward in this career. I see an opportunity to take this department, which is a great department, and make an example for the rest of this state of what a public safety department should be. I want to move forward into the 21st century and improve this department to the best of our ability to increase the amount of service we're able to give the citizens. And for that reason, that's where I'm looking to be director. I've been around for 28 years. I know this department. I know this community. I know what works in this town. I've been here for the floods, the tornadoes, the blackouts, the sinkholes, all the rest of it. So I've done a lot of on-the-job learning and how things have occurred in this community in the past. All of those things combined in the fact that I just truly do enjoy working for the city of Fraser, working with the Fraser Department of Public Safety, and working for the citizens and you, the city council. I'd like to continue doing that.
Great.
I'd like to do it as director.
Thank you. Councilwoman Sutherland,
See how I was quick on the button that time?
there you go.
So I just want to pick up on something that you just said. So you said that you would like to make Fraser an example for the rest of the state.
Right.
Can you give me like 2 specific things that you think that you would be able to accomplish that would do that?
I want the state, and again, there are even people in our own community don't understand public safety. I want to have the retention and get the recruitment of public safety officers, quality personnel that can serve the community to the best of their ability and make a name for themselves for this small 4-square-mile town in Macomb County. Again, we had our first homicide here recently for the year, which occurred in July, and it's a tragedy whenever something like that happens, but we managed to ride it out to July before we even had our first. And we had the subject in custody 12 hours later. That is good police work. That sets an example for other communities in our county, in this state, to how law enforcement should be done. That's one example of, I just want to expand on the personnel that we have, the training that we have, the technology that we are able to bring to play for us, to do our jobs at this point in time, and just make a name for ourselves. Let the people that are looking to do the bad things know that if they come to Fraser, we're going to put a stop to it. Our traffic enforcement has been around for many, many years. I got my first ticket by my old detective lieutenant when I was 16 years of age in this jurisdiction. We knew if we drove through Fraser, we were probably talking to a policeman. Bad guys know that too, so they don't come to Fraser. Again, just another example of using the tools that we have right now to further enhance this department and the way we do our job to protect the citizens and make a name for ourselves.
So what I'm hearing is expanding on personnel and training to make us the gold standard. That would be one. So then
Training for sure.
So what would be one more example then?
Again, I'm not against technology. I was the acting IT director for a short period of time for about 9 months here in town. I stepped up and was more than willing to do it and enjoyed my time doing it. I'd like to readdress the body cams with you folks. I know it was discussed at a previous meeting. That's a big thing in today's day and age. In this litigious society, it gives us protection. There are offenses that are difficult to authorize through the prosecutor's office if you don't have them on video. If I'm wearing the camera, it's going to be on video. Again, so bringing some additional technology into play would also be something I'm looking at. You mentioned expanding on the personnel. I don't know if I'd necessarily expand on personnel, but the training is a definite. I want to continue to enhance training and then bring some other technologies that were previously discussed, body cams being one example, and hopefully bring them into, and again, once we can get that extra accountability from body cams, you're also going to see insurance rates, stuff like that come into play, possibly some accreditation stuff. Again, I'm just looking to do whatever I can for the benefit of the community, honestly.
Thank you.
Councilman Odell.
Hi, Eric. As a director, you might have to implement policies that might be good for the department and the city, but very unpopular with the employees. What would be your approach to handle a situation like this? Or can you give me an example in your experience where you had to take such an action?
I've been a supervisor for the past 6-7 years. I've had to, unfortunately, tell my officers when what they're doing isn't necessarily appropriate or is in some way, shape, or form. For example, if some action is being taken by an officer, may not be a hard set violation of policy, but isn't really the best procedure and can see where it could become an issue, I'll have a conversation with the officer. We'll sit down, we'll chat about it. The people I work with have respect for me, and by the same token, I have respect for them. We both show that respect, but they understand my position, and they understand that when it comes to setting rules, setting policy, enforcing policy, that is all part of it. I'm big on education. I'm big on engaging my officers, but I also understand there's also an enforcement aspect that has to come into play, and the rules are the rules, and this is how we proceed forward. Again, referring back to the body cams, at one point, one reason that the body cams were not really jumped upon was I know there were concerns about how the officers would feel about body cameras. Would they be willing to wear them? Well, this is a paramilitary organization, and for the most part, we follow orders. And they're very good at following orders. My personnel are great at following orders. Again, that's how we manage to do the job as effectively as we do it. Because of that, if we implement a policy, whether it's body cameras or another policy that, as you said, may not be looked upon favorably by the majority of officers, unfortunately, this is part of the working environment. We have to explain to them why this policy comes into play, but they also have to understand because it is in play, it has to be enforced. And that is what will happen. It will be enforced when all is said and done. So yes, you have the conversations, you explain the policies, and then you step into enforcement when it becomes necessary.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Kolka.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Eric, for,
Welcome back, Ms. Kalka.
thank you. Appreciate that very much. Thank you for applying. Thank you. Your resume looks great. And, just taking on this great, opportunity. So I commend you for doing that. So what would the first 90 days look like with you in the role of director for the Department of Public Safety in Fraser?
I'm just going to refer to a quick set of notes. I was sort of expecting a similar type question. We had something similar at one of our other interviews. So, again, I brought up the body cams. It is something I'd like to get approached with you guys. I think we could get grant for it. In fact, I know we can get grant for it. There's a small rural tribal grant that is out there. We could probably cover a good portion of that with the grants. I would like to get that started and get that rolling because that takes time because it is technology and supply chain comes into play. I know you guys have an interest in 12-hour shifts. I would do everything in my power to encourage those 12-hour shifts, but I also understand that a lot of it has to be negotiated. It has to go through the collective bargaining aspect of things. But I am not opposed to 12-hour shifts. I can work with the officers and sell to the best of my ability. Again, referring back to Mr. Odell's question, possibly an unpopular aspect, but it's something that as times change, we as a department have to make change as well. I understand that. So that would be another aspect is I'd be looking at 12-hour shifts. I'm also looking toward accreditation. All the departments around us, well, Clayton Township is currently going through an accreditation process. Roseville, Sterling Heights, and Warren are already accredited by the state of Michigan. By the Chiefs of Police Association. I believe it's Michigan Chiefs of Police Association has an accreditation. What this accreditation does is it reviews our standard operating procedures, comes up with a policy where we then implement a assessment officer, for lack of a better description, whose primary task is to then go through and verify that our SOPs are being followed. Because of that accreditation, we have more accountability and less liability, and thereby, again, litigious society, less likelihood of a lawsuit. Our insurance rates go down, or at least our insurers can look at us and say, well, we've got something else here that's going to allow us to, have extra protection built in. Accreditation would be another thing that I would like to look at and possibly take into account. Recruitment. The officers, right now, I think we're exactly where we need to be for officers, and we've got retirements coming up. We're probably 2 years out from a good 5 retirements. So we've got to get some officers in the pipeline, and we've got to get some people thinking about wanting to become public safety. Again, even in this community, public safety is not a well-known concept. I've had to explain to my own citizens that I wear 3 hats. And I don't mind wearing 3 hats. In fact, I enjoy it. It's always been a fun way to do this job. For 26 years or 25 years that I've been on the road, I've enjoyed doing that. But first we have to make people understand what public safety is, and then hopefully find those candidates that want to be public safety officers. Whether it's, right now we predominantly go out to the police academies and we attempt to recruit. I'd also like to recruit out of the fire academies. Paying for one academy or the other becomes an option. It becomes that hiring bonus. If we wind up paying for an academy, that's the equivalent of a hiring bonus, let's say, that Warren or somebody else is putting out there. So there's where your recruitment comes into play. Your retention comes down to officers and their supervisors. Most people tend to quit their job, not because of the job, but because of their bosses. In fact, one survey I saw, which listed all the different reasons people quit jobs because of their bosses, was 47%. I think we strive to maintain the highest level of professionalism in our supervisors, and we will retain people. The 12-hour shifts, we'll fix schedules, we'll allow different aspects, more actual time off. Again, that becomes a retention issue. That becomes a positive when it comes to retaining people. So those are all things I'm looking into and looking at. The only other thing I'm sort of thinking about is some succession planning, because like I said, we have 5 retirements coming up in the next couple of years. A few of those are sergeants, so we have to start moving supervisors into place. As those sergeants retire, we have to replace them. So we, as supervisors, need to be looking at our personnel and identifying the strong suits and identifying the weak sets and improving those strengths and correcting those weaknesses to where we can take our officers. One of my old sergeants once told me that if he was doing his job properly, I would be able to do his job in the future. And because of that, I learned from him. And that's part of the reason I believe I became a sergeant, because he did a good job as a supervisor, which allowed me to learn from him and then take over in his shoes. That's where the succession planning comes into play, just sort of looking forward to what we have as far as openings coming up and how we're going to fill those openings. We've got good people. We've got great people in this department. And I don't have a lot of concerns with it, but obviously we need to do a little bit of focusing as far as what we need to plan for in the future. Also some equipment replacement issues that are going to come into play. Radios, possibly at some point, truck one. I know we just bought a new engine, so I'm not looking to push a new engine on you real quick. Not in the first 90 days, I promise. But
You better give us a couple years on that one.
but as was discussed when Sergeant Poole was up here selling the engine, technically under an FPA, truck one is supposed to be a backup vehicle at this point in time. So we need to start, my thought process when it comes to replacing equipment is possibly start, and again, I'm not a budget guru, I'm not a wizard when it comes to the budget, and that's where I need a finance director that I can speak with to possibly work this in. Some form of capital improvement plan when it comes to aspects of the public safety department. Put $100,000 a year away, so when that final purchase has to be made, we have it there. We pull it out of the savings, not come to you guys with a budget of, for a $1.5 million truck and say, okay, how are we going to pay for it, guys? At least at that point, we've put some money away in the account. Those are just some of my thought process of the first 90 days while I'm in the city of Fraser.
I think I've said that for about 10 years.
We've all said that.
Well, and again, it's something we can entertain. Again, I have to talk to somebody who knows budgeting better than I do. I don't believe it's illegal. I don't believe it's unethical. If those two things we can cross off the list, then it should definitely be feasible. It should be doable by us. And then we don't have to look at these big purchases later on down the road.
And that's a big purchase.
Well, you do, but they're funded.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I
Councilwoman
was
Blank.
wordy. I covered a lot in 90 days, but these are all the things I'm looking forward to.
The price of that truck today is $1.25 million.
Yeah, there we go.
Councilwoman Blank.
Thank you. Hi, Eric.
Ms. Blanky?
You've been here how many years?
I started in April of '94, so 28 plus some change.
So when you started, started here, and so you have lots of years of experience and circumstances and things you've seen and things you've heard. When you were a PSO, and you went through the ranks and you experienced, the career of
Yes,
a
ma'am.
police officer, what would you say is like, what was a consistent complaint, not just a negative, complaints overreach, a negative thing, a negative issue with PSOs, or say some guys or women that have maybe 4 or 5 years, into
Okay.
the career. Was there anything repeated that you saw through your career that still exists today, like as an issue, not necessarily life-threatening issue, but something that could be corrected?
Obviously, life-threatening issues would have been addressed long before I approached you guys, and we're sitting here. Honestly, I could think of very few things from back when I hired on to today that I see similar in the PSOs, even from where I was. I think a lot of that is generational. We've gone through a couple of different generations. We've gone through a couple of different ways of thinking for the children as they've come up. They're now young adults that are now adults and are now PSOs. I can think of honestly, I can't think of anything that matches up back when I was coming up versus the kids that are coming up now. It's been really remarkable from speaking with these kids as they've come in, because when I ask them why they're doing this job, especially with some of the stuff that's been going on in the last 2 to 3 years, why did you decide to do this job now? They give the same reason I did when I hired on. Because I want to make a difference, because I want to serve. I want to help people. And it's a standard canned answer for the most part, but it's what we all think when we begin this job. Nobody comes in here figuring you're going to get rich. You're not going to get rich. But really, when it comes to a problem, and I don't want to get too far off of your question, I can't identify anything back then that I'm seeing now that would be consistent. And even the problems that we have now, again, some of the generational stuff can become an issue. But none of it is out of our control or beyond our ability to compromise, adapt and overcome. Honestly, we make our way through this, and that's how we've done our job for the many years that I've been doing it. I haven't always liked decisions that were brought to me, but by the same token, I knew my position in this department, and I knew how things had to be done. And because I liked this department, and I liked it as a place to work, and I had respect for the people I worked with, I made the change. Most of the guys I have now will do the same thing. They may not always like my answer,
I'm
but
sorry.
they're okay with it.
I'm sorry. Were you done?
I'm done, I'm sorry.
I suspected that because I really do feel that you have to be a certain individual to go into that career and to do what you're doing. And there's a lot of gratitude, too. We talked about earlier the lines. When you came here, there were lines. You probably went skipping home that you got the job from here. I mean, it was quite an achievement. I get that. So I'm glad to hear that. I really am glad to hear that, because I've always found you to be honest and forthright. So thank you for your answer.
Thank you, Ms. Blanky, I appreciate that.
Councilwoman Shornack.
Okay. So what challenges do you see on an individual level for yourself coming into the role of the Director of Public Safety, and how would you address and overcome those challenges, especially since you've been here and you know everybody? So sometimes that can be a bad thing sometimes.
And I understand where you're coming from when you say that. I don't necessarily agree with that concept completely, but I understand where you're coming from. But again, the people that work with me and the people that have worked for me know where I stand. we're friends, we're colleagues, that is fine, but they also understand that at times there has to be decisions made that they don't necessarily get input into, nor do they, nor are they going to like 100% of the time. But because I respect them, because they respect me, and because we've communicated so well over the last decades, I think I can overcome a lot of that stuff. I mean, I understand that, you know, oh, this guy knows everybody, he's going to take it easy on him. That's not how, they wouldn't expect me to do that, okay? When I became a sergeant, I had to start pushing rules that as a PSO, I didn't really want to follow. You know, there were certain things that you just, oh, wait, but I can go do my report. I can do my reports later. I can go out there and get a couple more arrests, or I can do this, or I can do that. Well, no. There are times and steps that have to be taken so that your officers can continue to perform effectively, continue to perform efficiently. You know, I don't think I would have a problem with dealing with the personnel that are currently here or the personnel that are coming on in the future. In fact, I look forward to it. I was an FTO for many years. I trained officers. I was a field training officer. I love working with the new guys. That's part of the reason I want this job as director, because it allows me to continue to build with the new kids, especially after the last 2 or 3 years and the stuff that's been going on in this world, making sure that they're thinking ahead and how they're doing things properly, doing things safely, and with as little legal red tape and all the rest of it that comes into play. Nobody wants to be sued, but you can sue anybody for anything. So it's one of those slippery slopes. But I want to help the personnel underneath me and personnel underneath you, our PSOs, to continue their job effectively and as efficiently and cheaply as possible for the city. We don't want the lawsuits.
Very
There are rules that have to be enforced.
Yeah, no more lawsuits. Oh, nope. Thanks.
Okay, Eric, I'm going to shoot a couple at you.
All right, Mr. Carnegie. Mayor Carnegie, excuse me.
I know you're used the other way, right? He's called me worse, I'm sure.
Well, I'm his sergeant when we're on a fire scene, so anyway, but go ahead.
Right.
Just under your breath, no.
As you know, I've been here 34 years.
Yes, sir.
In service and worked under 5 directors. In the old days, you know, we used to have the comment that all special units, SIU, we had traffic with the road, motor carrier stuff. What do you think you could do in the future to bring some of those divisions back that could help city and keep the officers motivated? Because I know having people in divisions just makes a difference in people's careers.
Lateral movement's a good thing in a police department, especially in a 4 square mile police department. You can only drive around 4 square miles so many times before it starts looking very similar and you get a little dizzy. Getting
Walk it.
You would know.
I've done lots of laps in this community, thousands of miles, I can pretty much guarantee you. Either way, we have the criminal investigation division. We have our school resource officer. Those are basically our 2 lateral points of movement, and then we have chance at promotion. Technically, if a PSO has a paramedic license and there's an opening in the fire division, that's another position that could laterally occur. But that's it for at this point in time. We don't have comment. We don't have our special investigations. We got rid of our bike officer. We do still have the motorcycles, so we have a couple guys that like riding those, and that's a plus for them. It gives them, at least while they're driving around in circles, they get a nice breeze through their hair.
They have hair.
Yeah, exactly. The biggest problem we have at this point in time in regards to reopening those units is we don't have the manpower to both cover the road and open these units. Even now, right now, we have 3 officers assigned to the Detective Bureau, 1 sergeant, 1 property officer, and 1 detective. At times, they get overworked, to say the least. There's only 3 of them. If we can move personnel around, whether it's because of the manning situation, 12-hour shifts comes into play, possibly we can shift some personnel that way. If that opens up a body, I'm inclined to try to put them into federal task force, possibly DEA, COMET, which is a Macomb County drug team, MATS, Macomb County Auto Theft Squad. But again, we have to have the personnel, and we have to be able to utilize those personnel to efficiently do what we have to do for the city before we start going outside to try and do some outside stuff. I know SIU was a big favorite of the council for many years, and for obvious reasons. That's how a couple of our fire trucks were paid for. We love those guys. But that's changed too. As of right now, the legislature has managed to curtail a lot of forfeiture possibilities. I don't know that the forfeiture side of things is really the way to go, even if it comes down to looking for special unit assignments. But if we're getting a lot of cars broken into or a lot of stolen cars in town, possibly Macomb Auto Theft Squad would be a valuable source. You know, if we're not going to be able to pull in a lot of money with the forfeitures based on society as it stands right now, maybe we go another direction with some of those special assignments. Traffic division's easy. Again, if you have the personnel, we have the squad cars, we have the ticket writing ability, and we can encourage them to go out there and do it. But the officers I have now, I encourage you to go out there and do it because, as I stated, that's how we proactively fight crime in this city, is we stop drivers and we say hi. We don't write everybody a ticket. We very rarely violate people's rights in regards to any of that stuff. It's all, you know, the stuff you see on TV is not how it works here in Fraser. But by the same token, we do stop them, we do say hi. They know we're out there, the citizens feel better about it, and the bad guys tend to go around us, which is something I like.
Okay. And my second question is, what's your real position on the reserve program, such as the paid-on calls, it explores possibility on reserve officers?
Paid-on calls, I've worked with you for my 28 years of your 34. I have nothing bad to say about paid-on-call firefighters. You guys have been here through the thick and thin with us, and in fact, the only firefighter I've lost in my 28-year career, and I didn't lose, I was on the front lines with him, but he was a paid-on-call firefighter. And it's a loss that I was there for, and I've thought of every day since. Rest in peace, Dave Sutton. So as far as these paid-on-call firefighters, you are a key part of our department, and actually we need more of you because we have less personnel on the road to send to a fire scene. So we need more paid-on-call firefighters. In fact, when you watch the city channel, the ad for the paid-on-call firefighters was created by me when I was doing the IT stuff. I tried to make it all jazzy looking because I wanted to attract some kids. Fortunately, it hasn't seemed to work. So I have to come up with some way to get some more paid-on calls. Explorers, that becomes a real recruitment possibility. Again, as I was saying, I need to educate people about what public safety is. What I've known, or what I can tell you about public safety officers in the 28 years that I've been doing it, most people that go public safety don't leave public safety. They stay in public safety. Once they're playing with fire, police, ambulance, that's what they stay with. Again, we lost a person here in the last couple of, last 3-4 months to another department, a police department, and guess what? He came back to the public safety department. And when he was going to the police department, he was even asking if he could stay on as a paid-on call. So if we can start something along the lines of an Explorer program to get some of our youth aware of what public safety is and how it works in this community and why we do it in this community, that could help with recruitment in the near future. Because as those kids are graduating, again, becoming adults, and they'll become your next PSOs. So I'm all for it if I can come down to, again, manpower comes into play yet again. I still have to have somebody that's going to be able to work with these kids and spend the time with the kids. And we can do it from somewhat of a volunteer standpoint, but we still have liability because they're attached to the department. You know, insurances and stuff have to attach, so it's something we have to look at. But I would definitely be willing to entertain something along the lines of an Explorer program, if we can find an interest too. That's the other thing. You know, that's something that we'll only find out as we move forward. Sort of like the Little League program that suddenly you can't fill 2 teams, but we'll see what happens. I'm willing to look.
Mr. Adele, you had your light on?
I'll defer to
Councilwoman Baranski.
Oh, thank you. Hello. Circling back on one of the answers you gave, you talked about the traffic bureau and that it's not just a revenue generator, that there's also a community-based element to it, and focusing on sort of the role that society sees in traffic stops now.
Okay.
What role do you see the public safety department playing in the community, and what changes would you implement as it pertains to community relations so that we can emphasize the good that can come out of traffic patrol, and de-escalate the risks and the bad.
Well, again, I mean, that traffic enforcement has been one of the backbones of this department as far as its proactive steps. And when it comes to PR, in all honesty, one of the guys that served longest in our traffic bureau, Officer Honowski, I still run into people every day who ask me, "Is Gene working? Is Officer Honowski around?" So even while he was out there enforcing the traffic laws, and he wrote a lot of tickets, he was very good at it. He was interacting with the public. He was stopping on the motorcycle to talk to the resident on this street where he just stopped two speeders to talk to them, find out, what are the traffic conditions like? Maybe when I'm not here, what are you seeing? When I'm sitting here, obviously I know. But he would take the time and he would speak to the residents. That's one way to utilize traffic enforcement to help PR. Again, also as far as community relations and that sort of thing, I would like to possibly one given weekday a month arrange where we have like a cops and coffee set up at Vic's Diner one time, maybe Liz's Ham Cafe another time. But myself as director, a sergeant, one of our patrolmen, assuming we have the manpower that we can work everything out, and just step into this business for 2 hours, let's say 8 to 10, something along those lines. Hit the breakfast crowds, speak with the residents that are at these establishments, see if anybody has any concerns that they wish to voice. I'm big on communication. Again, like I said, I love to engage my officers. I love to engage the public. I want to talk to people. I've stopped and talked to some of you when I'm out on patrol. Obviously, you're council people, so I recognize you. But by the same token, I talk to other. What I'm just saying, when I'm cruising your subdivisions, I've talked to Ms. Kelka once or twice, just because I was driving through the subdivision. And I do the same thing with all our other residents. If you aren't engaging and you aren't communicating with your residents, you don't know what they're looking for and you don't understand their problems. I know you guys get a lot of emails and we get a lot of complaints on our website and stuff like that. But I even like just stopping somebody walking their dog and saying, "Oh, he's so cute. What breed is he? How's it going? Is there anything I can do for you?" I had a conversation with a young lady at the city picnic, and it was a great conversation, and she was happy to have us there. And then a fight broke out, and we took care of the fight. We resolved the problem. It went quick, but we took care of the problem. And unfortunately, I watched her leave the city picnic, and I stopped her and I said, "Well, you aren't staying for fireworks?" And her statement to me was, "Well, we were thinking about it, but after what just happened, we're concerned." And that tells me that our community is concerned for their safety, and we have to step up and resolve that. I mean, that was something that actually pulled at my heartstrings a little bit. Was talking to this woman, and an hour later, after we did our job effectively, we kept the injuries to a minimum, we placed people under arrest that needed to be arrested. But she just didn't feel safe. In a park full of 15,000 people, she didn't feel safe. Then I as director need to figure out why and how I can resolve that. Again, I love to talk to people, and I want to talk to people. And my door is always open and my phone is always on. So if I do get the position, please, any resident that's watching, call me. We'll have a conversation. Come out for Cops and Coffee. Like I said, it's a little program I'd like to start. It's a couple hours, once a month, just so you can interact. And like I said, we'll hit a different location around the community. I don't want to put my restaurant owners or anything like that out of the loop. I'm not going to hold it in the council chambers. We're going to go to a restaurant. We'll just sit down and we'll talk. Bring the newspaper if you want, but let's talk and we'll go from there with it. So traffic enforcement, community relations, big things with me. Utilizing traffic enforcement for community relations, again, that's sort of my whole mindset, is that's how we've always done it. We've always spoke to our residents and non-residents on traffic stops. Some go well, some don't. I mean, a lot of people get away without tickets. I don't write that many tickets, I really don't. But that's sort of where I'm at. I hope that answer is sufficient for what you're looking for.
Very much so. And I just want to ask one more follow-up, kind of unrelated, actually completely different.
Okay.
Something I don't think you've touched on yet, a little bit, but what factors would you consider when determining the appropriate staffing levels, equipment needs, capital planning, and overtime costs when assessing and determining the city's budget?
Well, I've verbalized that I am not a budget wizard. I'm not a budget guru. I'm willing to learn. statistically, I am very good with statistics. Analyze those numbers, I make things work. I do know I have two captains that are very good at what they do, and Captain Bisbee has worked on the budget for many years. So I would be falling back on him to some extent to attempt to educate me so we could get some stuff done. You guys handle the purse strings. You're going to tell me what my budget is. I then have to make that money work. I understand that. But again, I can't get into a whole lot of budgeting questions because my budgeting experience is very limited. A little bit while I was in fire officer school, we had a little bit of training in that. And when I was at the Macomb County Police and Fire Leadership classes, we had 1 day of budgeting. But in all honesty, I don't have a background for it. I didn't have an opportunity to attend staff and command, which I understand there's a little bit of that involved in that as well. So I don't have a lot of answers in regards to your budget, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I do or that I have all these big plans. But I will tell you that I will work my hardest to learn what I have to learn, to do it as effectively as possible. And again, I understand the concept of ethics and the concepts of illegality. You know, we're not going to cross those lines. But I also want to understand the budgeting concept so that I can move forward and make, you know, take positive steps for the department. And again, the money comes from you folks. I understand that. We have to figure out how we're going to spend it, and we have to request it. That's what the budget is. So I have to put that together. I've got two good captains that should be able to assist me, and I'm hoping I can pick up on that pretty quickly. And if it comes down to it and I have to take some additional training on my own, I'll do that too. Because I've never gone into anything in my life halfway. I've always been 100%, whether it was this job, my kids, my wife, whatever the case. I've always given everything that I could. Again, when it comes to the budget, I'm not a genius at it, but I will figure it out, and I hope you give me the opportunity to do so.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Blanky.
I would just, I don't have a question for you. I have a compliment.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm listening to you, and you've said several times, let's say you're deficient with finance, and so was I through, you know, a lot of us, we have our strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And I would rather have a cup of coffee with you than go through, no offense, Sarah. I would rather have a cup of coffee with you than go through a spreadsheet. And I have noticed firsthand in my residency here, you are a gentleman and you do care and you go out of your way. I've been in situations with you just watching, that I just want to compliment you, regardless of what. You have served Fraser very, very well, and God bless you. Thank you.
Well, Ms. Blanky, I thank you very much. You're right, reading a spreadsheet is a little more work than drinking coffee. Unfortunately, the spreadsheet comes first because the spreadsheet is required. I do know BS&A. I do have a little bit of background there, so I know how to look at the general ledgers and stuff like that because it came up when I was doing the IT stuff. So I have a little bit of background in regards to using that software package. But no, unfortunately, as much as I'd love to drink coffee all day, the spreadsheets have to come first because there are things that come from those spreadsheets that allow us to do our job and proceed forward. But thank you for the compliment. I do appreciate it, ma'am.
You're also a pretty damn good firefighter, too.
I try.
I can tell you that.
Again, everything I do it to my fullest, and that's whether it's serving this community or, like I said, my kids, the rest of it.
Good guy.
Yeah, we've been to battle together. It's been fun.
Time is winding down shortly. We'd like to leave a little bit of time if you have any questions or there's any additional information you wish to provide or questions you might have. Now might.
And if I may, I never heard where I placed on the EMCO assessment. I'm just curious if you could tell me what number I came in, 1 through 4.
The EMCO assessment portion, any questions regarding that, EMCO was reserving until after this stage.
Okay.
So that there was no conflicts with that.
So I will touch bases with EMCO then. And I'm fine with that, but that was one question I had. Secondly, how quick do you figure we're going to moving forward on any of this? Do you have any idea, I guess?
Yeah, it is possible that we can deliberate tonight and make a decision, and we also have a council meeting next Thursday if council
So no later
wants to
than.
do that, but probably no later than next Thursday.
I'm working midnights tonight, and I'll be here on midnights next Thursday, so I'll be looking forward to seeing a response from you folks. I thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you today.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to
Thank you for
apply,
everything
and
you've
we'll
done
go
up to
forward.
now, for our community too, truly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, sir.
Oh, God, I've been so over that for so many.
Oh, sure, as I have to go last.
On your way out, no, on your way out, make sure I turn my car off. Remember,
You have left it running before.
and he's the one that noticed.
This is why I hate those
Like
keyless
an hour
things.
later, oh, your car's
I'm gonna use the
running,
restroom.
you know? Okay.
But I do, I hate those keyless cars.
Well-
I know that's the way the world's going, but I absolutely.
Are you going to the bathroom again?
Yes. I didn't go last time.
Oh,
Again, I was going to go.
Hello? I didn't figure it out.
3 minutes, 4 minutes, go ahead.
Councilwoman Mikulka, potty police.
Bring them in anyway.
Good evening, Scott. Thank you for coming in tonight and sitting down with us. If you can start off by just briefly introduce yourself, highlighting some items that may not be fully reflected in your resume or video questions, and explain your motivation for why we applied for the position in the city of Fraser as a director.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me tonight. I appreciate the opportunity, and just to start off with that, as you know, my name is Scott Rohr. I was born and raised in Michigan. I grew up in East Detroit, just down the road, now East Point. I currently live in Macomb Township with my wife, Darcy, who teaches chemistry at Rochester Adams High. I've worked in the public service field for 31 years. I started at Taylor Ambulance and as a paramedic, and for the last 26 plus years in Grosse Pointe Shores Public Safety Department. I am currently licensed as a paramedic instructor coordinator. I'm ACLS certified. I'm a CPR instructor. I'm an investigator. I have advanced interrogation training. I'm an evidence technician, department's firearms instructor, to name a few of the many certificates that I have that you may have in front of you. I attended Macomb Community College for the police academy and fire academies, obtained my MCOL certificate and my firefighter 2 in hazmat operations. I have a bachelor's degree from Siena Heights University in public safety studies. My administrative responsibilities began approximately in 2003 when I was promoted to patrol sergeant, and I was soon reassigned to the detective bureau.
Nope, you're fine. Continue, sorry.
I was soon reassigned to the detective bureau with administrative responsibilities and the officer in charge of all cases for the city. Since that time, my responsibilities have grown to include the public information officer for press releases. I do background and internal affairs investigations, the juvenile officer for the department. I'm the EMS coordinator, responsible for budgeting, purchasing, billing, licensing, quality assurance, and training for all EMS personnel. I administrate the sex offender registry, all forfeiture funds, all freedom of information and discovery requests, gun permits. I'm the department lien, TAC, and LASSO officer, and basically managing all the state audits for our lien system, essentially. I also administrate up to 12 civilian employees in our clerical division. That includes the training and hiring of all the clerks, as well as and so forth. Since 2012, my title and assignment's been Detective Lieutenant Commander of Special Operations, and I'm currently also assigned as a patrol commander due to a recent retirement. Some additional experience and responsibilities include, for the past 20 years, I've held a position as a union president for both patrol and command unions. For the past 17 years, I've been a board member on the Detroit East Med Control Authority. I'm also co-chair for their advisory committee. I'm DEMCA PSRO board member. And for the past 14 years, I've been a pension commissioner with the Grosse Pointe Shores Pension Fund. And outside of work, I'm a licensed real estate broker and a mortgage lender. Over the past 20 years as a supervisor, I would best be described as a situational manager, leaning towards a transformational management style. As an ever-evolving administrator, I've helped develop many of the department policies, general orders, prepared annual reports for council, assisted in the preparation of budgets, handling purchasing, public auctions, and I'm the administrator for all technology within the department. I'm also responsible for the development of many of our day-to-day operational procedures. As the detective, I create a lot of the processes and do a lot of the auditing of our arrests and quality assurance within the department. Some of my goals to get the position with you guys as the Director of Public Safety. I've worked my entire career pretty much in public service with the directive path of the public safety profile, and I've always admired the Fraser public safety structure. It's always had a good reputation, and it was actually a department that I was shooting for when I was applying for positions. And I believe at the time there was like a hiring freeze or something going on, or they had a list that wasn't going to expire. So it's actually been a goal of mine for pretty much my whole career. I've always admired the public safety of Fraser. So that pretty much wraps up what you wouldn't have already in front of you.
Great, well, thank you very much.
What's kind of the order we've been going in, so,
Okay.
you know.
I didn't have my
Might as
list.
well, oh, yeah,
Okay,
we'll
so
stick with it.
Okay, so no, that's fine. I'm prepared to go first. So I was part of your initial interview via Zoom with the subcommittee, and one of the questions that you were asked that I was really impressed by your answer. I'm going to ask it to you again to see, no pressure, right? To see how it goes tonight. So what challenges do you see the Fraser Department of Public Safety and/or policing in general facing in the next 5 years, and what plans do you have to address those challenges?
Well, generically, I think the public service field, and particularly the police field, is facing many challenges. You know, building back the trust of the community, even if it was undeserving of losing some of that trust. But I think basically establishing the transparency with residents and the community at large, and making sure that what we do is an open book for the people that we serve. And I really feel that the best way forward within the police field is to make sure that everyone we're serving recognizes what we're doing and the goals that we have to achieve within that. Specifically within Fraser, after reviewing a lot of what I've seen budget-wise and some of the structure of the department itself, I without sounding critical, I see some areas that could use improvement, and I think there's room for improvement that would help the city budget-wise, and I think overall the structure of the department for future recruiting, retention of new recruits, and I think the overall happiness of the force itself, in particular the scheduling, I think would play a dramatic role in that.
So you talked a little bit, as a little follow-up, about overtime too, that you had done some research around overtime.
I did, and you guys are paying quite a bit. I'd say about $310,000 is budgeted right now, and I want to say about $25,800 per month, and that's nearly $1,000 an officer in overtime budgeted right now. And I think that has unfortunately a lot to do with the structure of how the department is set up, and primarily the schedule and the three shifts per day, 3 different platoons, the 8-hour shifts. And I think with the way it's staffed, the 8-hour shift in and of itself runs at about 71% efficiency because you have to have leave days worked in there. So by the very nature of 8 hours, you don't have common leave days for the officers. So you have an officer off on Monday, Tuesday, a different officer off on Wednesday, Thursday. So as you rotate those days off, you're constantly running at 71% staffing, basically. I figured it about 29% inefficient. Within that, the department itself, because of the way it's structured, and I think you're running with 5 patrol sergeants right now. So if you even have one person call off sick, you have either overtime or forced overtime at double time, which is terribly inefficient for the city, which is probably why we have so much budgeted for the overtime itself. My recommendation would be to switch to a 12-hour shift, 2 platoons with a day and a night shift. And with that system, you run at 100% efficiency because you share common days off, and you would be able to split the afternoons, let's say, and make them a day and a night shift, and you would have more staffing on each shift and share the common leave days, which would be more efficient, and you would have more staff on patrol at one time, would allow for vacations and or sick time to be used without forcing automatic overtime on every platoon. I actually did some numbers and laid out some scheduling actually after we had actually talked, and looked at how it would look even if we went maximum, like 1 month schedule. I figured it at like 1,100 hours of vacation time, and there were still additional shifts available to have more people off without hitting the minimums or below the minimums.
That was the answer I recall. Thank you.
Councilman Odell.
Hey, Scott. As a director, you might have to implement policies that may be good for the department and city, but are unpopular with the employees for general changes. What would be your approach to handle a situation like this, or can you give an example in your experience where you've had to take such an action?
Well, as a whole, as an administrator, I still have to implement or be the bad guy in a lot of things when it comes to changing work assignments or changing responsibilities or handing out additional work. I would maybe reference the 12-hour schedule change, because you will inherently see some people that would embrace it without much motivation at all, and you will possibly see some that no matter what you do, they're going to hate it. I think, at least my experience is not to waste a lot of time on people you're never going to sway, but the people who you can convince, really show them, like for the 12-hour schedule, you will have more time off. You will have every other weekend, a 3-day weekend. So really take into account all the information that you can share with them on something like this, structural changes. So that way they can make an educated decision instead of just jumping on the bandwagon when somebody says, well, these are terrible, this is awful, actually sitting down and saying, here's the advantages. There's obviously some disadvantages to everything, when you make changes. And some people are just inherently resistant to change no matter what you do. So I think the ones that you can talk to or explain, spend a good deal of time showing all in why that structure has become one of the normal structures, particularly in the public safety area because of the added responsibility of the EMS and the fire. It allows for officers to actually be assigned to station duty so that they can complete their training, that they can augment the fire truck and respond. You'll have a faster response time if you do it that way, and you'll get a guy off the road or a gal off the road for a portion of their shift for at least that rotation. And I find that to be helpful to refresh people so that they can take care of other responsibilities at the same time.
Thank you.
I've got a couple questions for you. I've served on the department for 34 years as a firefighter, paid on-call firefighter. And in the old days, we had a lot of divisions like Comet, MATS, SIU, all these big divisions, and a lot of them generated revenue for the city and actually fighting crime. What do you think you could do in the future to maybe bring some of those divisions back to the city and making the officers, actually, more of an exciting career than just road patrol and waiting for the bells to go off?
I think you would have to get the cooperation from all of you. Part of that would be, some of the stuff takes extra capital, it takes extra manpower, it might create extra overtime. So to start off, for me to sell something like that to council, I would have to show that I can improve some of the efficiencies of the department first. And I think that's what I'm getting, and when my previous interview in the process, I'm picking up what's getting laid down as far as you guys recognize there's some inefficiencies in that prior to this process of hiring outside or even possibly inside, I think there's been a lack of push to address some of these things internally, and possibly that might be motivation for looking outside as one of the options. My perspective would be to create more efficiency within the department so that way we could expand into areas that we're currently not expanding into, traffic or some of the different bureaus or different teams, if you will, special assignments, because I know there's revenue to be had, and maybe that's not the sole purpose, generally speaking, but there is a potential for that purpose. And within my own experience as the detective lieutenant, even this month, there's something in the paper on turning money over to the city. I think I did an identity theft case that ended up doing search warrants and recovering about $25,000, which was just put in the budget this particular month, this week. And that was just following a case to fruition. And in my own experience, I am particularly, I just do not like identity theft cases because I think people take advantage of it. They're very infrequently investigated to the fullest, and I find them to be very satisfying to arrest people on those. And believe it or not, when it trickles down to when you're serving search warrants and you're recovering property, the identity theft statute has a very liberal approach to what you can do and things that you can recover within that process. But moreover, the case that I'm referencing, we discovered 50 different victims just pursuing an identity theft case of what was an elderly gentleman. He had no idea it was happening. So I guess my point is to go down each one of those paths as best you can and create some of that within the department and encourage it. And part of that is the ability from within my own department for the trust to be able to take it down that direction. And when I'm bringing the SWAT team and 20 guys up to, which in this case was just outside of Flint and Burton, there's a lot of a commitment there. But as it turned out, it was fruitful in the end. So I think building trust with you guys and gals to allow me the opportunity to do that so that you could see I'm serious about the budget, but I'm also serious about possibly expanding. And I also see benefits to the officers because they see those as a path to broaden their career. And for people who do this as a living, they see it as exciting and rewarding. I know I do, so.
Okay. My follow-up to that is, those 34 years I worked under 5 directors, all different mentalities, as you can imagine. What's your real position on the reserve programs such as the paid-on-call firefighters, the junior explorers that a lot of communities use, and reserve officers?
What's my position? I think they're essential. I really believe that, especially when every department is shrinking to some degree, if you have the ability to augment the services that you can with either volunteers or lower paid staff that can do equivalent jobs, I think it's essential to try to embrace that. And even more so in recruitment, because some of those cadets turn out to be future law enforcement officers and public safety officers. So it would be ideal to do that. And I know Fraser in the past has had a more expanse volunteer paid on call fire personnel. And I was inquiring as to where that was right now, and I know that has shrunk to some degree. I think it would be great to augment the department with more of those personnel. The key is obviously where it fits in the budget, how much the training will be. You know, I mean, it's you got to strike a balance somewhere in there as well. Managing all that is not always as simple as it sounds, but I think it's a great idea.
No, it needs to be improved, and I think there's 8 of us now,
Yes.
left out of 30. Okay. Councilwoman Blanky.
Thank you. Hello, how are you, Scott?
Excellent. Thanks for asking. How are you?
If I'm reading this correctly, and if I recall correctly, you mentioned you looked at Fraser from the beginning of your career,
Yes, ma'am.
correct? And we kind of covered that from years ago when law enforcement was, the 5-star career. There were so many of men and women going to the academies and whatever. So you began your career in the village of Grosse Pointe?
I initially started with Taylor Ambulance in the city of Detroit.
Okay, and I'm just looking at the resume, How long, and it said here that you worked in Grosse Pointe for the 7 years?
I worked in for Taylor Ambulance for approximately 6 years. And in 1996, I was hired by Grosse Pointe Shores. And
Okay.
I've been with Grosse Pointe Shores since then.
So
I'm
that's-
still with Grosse Pointe Shores.
So that's the bulk, that is your career in there?
Yes, ma'am, yes.
What is the population there?
We are about 3,000.
3,000. So our population here is almost 15,000. I guess what I'm getting to is, first of all, I didn't realize it was only 3,000, the population, but there's so many Grosse Pointes. I'm an East Sider, so I get
Bigger
that.
lots.
Yeah, they all have, every 2 blocks it changes,
pain to see
3,000
something, yeah.
feels like a lot more if you deal with it in Grosse Pointe Shores.
right? But I'm just curious, I know I've lived here quite a while, raised my family. When you began your career several years ago, what in your mind drew you, thinking of Fraser? What compared to Grosse Pointe and compared to the smaller community they have?
Thank you for asking. While working with Taylor Ambulance, they began a contract with Grosse Pointe Park and Grosse Pointe Shores. And I guess I could back up even further. While working as a paramedic in the city, we were contracted with Detroit EMS and within Highland Park, and we did a lot of what's now called mobile intensive care transports. It did not have that name at the time, but that was my job. And back then, there were very few paramedics. We were one of a handful in the whole city at the time. And I tell you that because when I went to the hospitals, occasionally I would bump into an ambulance offloading patients. There'd be a police officer in the back of the rig offloading a patient, and I was perplexed by this because it didn't register. I had no idea, even the public safety model at the time, that there was such a thing, and that they were transporting public safety officers because they'd get out with a full traps and gun and the whole deal, and they'd be offloading patients at, let's say, Bon Secours Hospital. And I was very intrigued by that. And a short time later, we began being contracted for advanced life support in Grosse Pointe Park and as a echo unit in Grosse Pointe Shores. And this was in the development phases before we began our own advanced life support in Grosse Pointe Shores. So I was contracted as an employee there, or a contract employee with Grosse Pointe Shores for a couple of years, and then was hired on by Grosse Pointe Shores as they furthered their advanced life support program and started transporting their own patients with public safety officers. So at that time was when I started exploring the public safety field, and I learned about Fraser because there's it's not broadly known, and you had to actually research it to figure out what the field was. And I truly enjoyed the medical side of what I do, and did, very much so. So I kind of wanted to embrace that and further the career. So I researched Fraser, and it was one that was already well-established, and it was in a little bit bigger area, and at the time it was enticing for me to want to come here. And I wish I could remember exactly what it was, either a hiring freeze or a list that wasn't going to expire. But it was something that discouraged me from being able to move forward within Fraser. But then Grosse Pointe Shores made me an offer, and I've been there and happy ever since. I'm not complaining.
No, I was just curious, you know.
I was very intrigued, actually, back in the day.
I have been here 54 years, and when my husband said he saw a house in Fraser, I said, "What's a Fraser?" I had no idea, you know,
Right.
but I just was curious, and I'm glad. I mean, our reputation precedes us.
It very much does. I was
We have had-
very pleased to have this opportunity. I have to be honest with you, because it does kind of feel full circle for me, because
Good.
I feel a little bit like I was deprived, not taking anything away
Right.
from your Grosse Pointe Shores, because it's been a wonderful city to work for, but
Yes.
I do feel a little bit like this has been another opportunity to come and, be part of Fraser now, so
Good. Thank you.
thank you.
Councilwoman Kolka.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Scott, for coming today. I'm sorry, I was trying to turn it off for you. Thank you for coming, and your resume is amazing. So I just want to ask you, though, what attributes do you think that you would be bringing to the city of Fraser, and how would you use those?
Firstly, I think my attributes are that I have a well-rounded resume, and that by that I mean I have extensive experience with law enforcement. I've been allowed the freedom to do very extensive investigations, put together ad hoc teams, done lots of the law enforcement side, which I, again, truly love. But I've never gotten away from my desire for the EMS side of things. And a lot of my training goes deep into the EMS side of things as a paramedic, as an instructor coordinator, both additional licenses. And, it's allowed me the pleasure of continuing what started my career was within the EMS field. And I feel it's been very rewarding. I actually was just in the back of the truck the other day. We had a shortage, and I had an opportunity to jump in the back of the truck, and I was treating patients just the other day, and still enjoyed it very much. It was a good experience. Somewhat of notoriety, but I can't share. But it was very interesting, and I enjoy it. I really do truly enjoy it, and I think that what I bring to the table is the experience of the three different fields, which Fraser is ideally set up for me because of that, because there's very few fully trained police, fully trained fire, and fully trained paramedics that come, I'm sure, before you, and I'm not saying that to sound, big on myself, but it's difficult to do, to complete all three and maintain all three licenses and to stay proficient at them. So I think one of the main things that I bring to the table that I'm not positive everybody else's, credentials, but I think I bring the three specialties to Fraser that Fraser offers to its residents. And I do have to say that much of my experience within the EMS field, I found that to be the area that our residents appreciate the most. It's the area that we get the most response letters. It's the area that most people are they send us the most feedback on. And I think because I've had that opportunity to treat people and help people, it's allowed me, it's very rewarding for me. And I think that that's part of what I bring to the table for Fraser, is that I can say that my experience goes back over 30 years from helping people from way back when I was an EMT, then a paramedic, and all the way through a transporting advanced life support public safety department.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilwoman Baranski.
Yes, thank you. That's me. I have to admit, I didn't realize Grosse Pointe only had 3,000 residents, or Grosse Pointe Shores, I should say. Can you remind me again? I know we talked about it in the interview. How many officers are there? How many PSOs are there in the
Fully staffed or currently?
Fully
we're
how many
at 19.
budgeted?
We're supposed to have 19.
Okay.
And within the Grosse Pointe Shores, I know I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. That's fine. Exactly. And so it's going to kind of morph, but what type of sort of calls are you getting in your community? What's sort of the day in and day out in a PSO in Grosse Pointe Shores consist of?
The typical stuff, property crimes. We don't have, there's some assaultive crimes, there's some domestic, a lot of, believe it or not, financial crimes. We've got a string of UTAs that just started recently. I was dealing with that today.
What's that?
Stolen cars. And they kind of run hot and cold. You'll see a group that'll start working an area, and they'll start hitting cars, and then we either have to catch them or they move on their own, but typically we have to catch them before we can stop the cars from getting stolen. But that's what we normally end up with. And some of the unique stuff within Grosse Pointe Shores is that we're geared towards a high level of service. And that's what, again, I would bring to the table, is that we treat our residents like they are very special, because they appreciate us. And I think that providing that level of interaction with residents is appreciated. And it's grown to be expected within Grosse Pointe Shores, but I think it should be expected from all public service. We are here to serve and protect.
What could you give me some examples of what that means? I know back in the day, my husband was a police officer. Back in the day, they used to do here, back when they had a lot more, vacation checks. You could call and they had a list, and if you were on vacation, the police would do a drive-by just to make sure everything was all right. What kind of services do the community get?
Oh, like off-paper services.
Yeah.
We could be helping, during a power failure, help an elderly person open their garage door.
Okay.
I've gotten calls at 3 a.m. for an ice machine that's overflowing with water, and a panicked resident doesn't know what to do. So you are especially with our older citizens, you are the stopgap measure. If they don't have family nearby, it's a big deal for them. When they don't know what to do, they call us. And so we come over and we solve problems. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Perfect.
It's not about law enforcement all the time. Actually, in Grosse Pointe Shores, it's probably less about law enforcement and more about customer service.
Okay. And then segueing to sort of a lot of the changes that are going on in the communities now, or in the world now, how do you see the Fraser Department of Public Safety, if you were the director, adapting to the changes in terms of the community and what the community wants or what the community thinks versus what the truth is with regard to the public? How do you navigate that role, especially if you were to come into a bigger community that we have a wider variety of socioeconomic status, other issues? How would you navigate those changes that are going on?
I think it goes back to what I said earlier. It has to do with building trust, and it has to do with the transparency. I've also found that some of the technology nowadays is very advantageous to the department, both from a liability standpoint and from a transparency standpoint, because when you can show the public what's going on and literally watch it in high def, there's not much debate as to whether the officer was acting appropriately or whether they went above and beyond to help somebody. Or, I can give you a ton of examples of that, but I think really it has to do with good communication and transparency with the residents. And to pivot off of that, training and to make sure our officers are doing the right thing. So to internally manage that and do our own housekeeping, if you will, if there is a need to do such.
Thank you very much.
Councilwoman Shurnack.
Okay. So what challenges do you see on an individual level for yourself coming into the role of director for the public safety, and how would you address and overcome these challenges?
I think the obvious one is I'm coming in from outside. And I think there'll be a lot of buzz when you guys finally make a decision as to what's going to happen. I think it's been probably a buildup, if it's like any place else, a lot of conversations, a lot of anxiety. And I think the biggest thing to get over is to work on that relationship with staff, and to come in and get to know people and kind of just observe before you come in, making changes and do things too quickly, just to spend some time observing and taking in the operation and making sure I have all the information before decisions are made. I would plan on riding along with some guys and gals for shifts, and come in on the night shift and check out what's going on and how the shifts are going. And listen, because I'm sure for all the stuff that's going right, there's people that are unhappy about some things, and to hear what they have to say and see if there's anything that can be addressed. And that will, I think, help build camaraderie and some trust within the ranks to address issues within my control, to make people understand that I'm not here to be their best friend, but I'm also not here to be their enemy either. I believe I'm what's called a cop's cop. I believe in supporting the patrol units, because that's the face that everyone sees when you call 911 and they show up, making sure that they're doing their job with the right attitude and they address the citizens with the right tone and the right approach, and to take that into account if they're not. So firm but fair is how I would look at things, and try to address them as they come.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions? Okay, do you have any questions for us at this time?
What's next in the process?
It's possible that we could deliberate and make a choice tonight, and we also have a council meeting next Thursday. And
later than
we'll
next
definitely have a decision at least by next Thursday for sure.
Absolutely.
Or that is one thing we are unanimous on.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's all I have right now.
great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming back in.
Thank you.
Take care. Be safe.
Anyone's got to use the rooms.
I gotta get water.
You know how you feel, so emotional.
I hate shoe shopping more than anything in life, so I won't
Oh, we have that in common. Sam. Either one is fine, but most people call me Sam.
Obsessed.
All right, we are live. Samantha, thank you for coming in tonight. We appreciate it very much. Why don't you just start off with just briefly introduce yourself, because we're on TV and many people may be watching, and highlighting some items that may not be on your resume, and then what was your motivation for applying for the director's position in the city of Fraser?
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, first and foremost. But a little bit about my background. I was hired in Oak Park by their Department of Public Safety back in 1994. They paid to put me through the police academy and shortly thereafter the fire academy.
Oh,
Can
move
you
the mic
play
a little closer. There you go.
Is that better?
Yeah, thanks.
So I went to both the police and fire academy, paid for by the Department of Oak Park. Shortly thereafter, I was on patrol for roughly 4 years and invited to be in the FTO program. After about 4 years, I was brought into the Investigations Bureau, where I worked for the next 5 years or so. During that time, I tried out for and was selected for Oak Park Special Response Team. At that time, it was a 10-person team. It was just an in-house team. It wasn't a community or a county team. It was Oak Park's own team, where I stayed on that team for about 5 years, learning everything about tactics and weapons and things of that nature. I was promoted to sergeant while I was on the team, so I was able to be a commander on the SRT, and eventually was on the road as a sergeant. So I worked on patrol as a sergeant for a short time, about 6 months or so, when I was invited to go back into investigations as a sergeant and on the SRT. After a year and a half or 2 years of that, I promoted to lieutenant and left the Investigations Bureau and went back out on the road. And I was on the road in that capacity for about 8 years or so when, again, I was promoted into the Investigations Bureau. It was at that time that our department went through huge layoffs. We lost 15 people, and so we had to do a lot of restructuring. And I was part of the chief's executive team that was in charge of restructuring our department to accommodate that loss of people. I went into investigations while all of that was occurring, and in that capacity, I was also in charge of the property room and auditing of those things, as well as, of course, all of the detectives. I did not have a sergeant or a secretary at that time due to the massive loss of people, so I ran that unit by myself for close to 5 years. I left the unit and came back out on patrol where I serve today, and it's been several years, and of course I'm in charge of all of the patrol operations on my platoon, as well as dealing with the jail. We have our own lockup facility, which is not for long term, it's just short term, but part of our responsibilities are housing of prisoners, care and custody of prisoners, transporting prisoners, things of that nature. As far as education goes, I have an associate's degree from Macomb Community College. I have a bachelor's degree from Central Michigan University in public administration and community development. I was fortunate enough to go to Northwestern University's School of Staff and Command, and I have had the honor and absolute privilege of attending the FBI's National Academy. What brings me to Fraser? Sir, that was part of the question, yes. I've always had an interest in this city. I applied here back in 1993 or 94 when I was looking for a job. I was fortunate enough to be hired by Oak Park, and at some point, probably within the first year or so, Fraser did call me and ask me if I was still interested, but I chose to stay loyal to Oak Park. They paid to train me, and it was a great place to work, and so that's where I've been for the last 28 years. But this community is very similar to Oak Park in geographic size for sure. The Public Safety Department is a little smaller. I mean, there's probably around 30 or so people, give or take now. I understand that there's been financial issues in the city as well, leading to layoffs and the loss of your dispatch. I'm no stranger to that and to lack of personnel. But this is a public safety department, and that's what I've been living and breathing for the last 28 years. I absolutely love it. This is what I do. And I want to continue with that. I'm retiring from Oak Park in about 2 weeks, and I'll have 28 full years. And nothing would make me more proud or happy to step into this public safety department and do everything that I can to make this a better place to work and to serve the citizens of Fraser.
Great.
All right.
Councilwoman Sutherland.
All right, I'm ready. So I'm glad because you already kind of touched on it, and it's something that you touched on in your initial interview with the subcommittee when we had that one via Zoom. And you just mentioned the geographic similarities between Oak Park and Fraser. And from what I know, there are also socioeconomic similarities between Oak Park and Fraser as far as like the diversity aspect goes. So if you were to be offered the position, what do you think that your experience in Oak Park, what would you bring with you to really hit the ground running, knowing that there are those similarities? What would be instrumental in just being able to get in and get started right away?
Well, because there are a lot of similarities, I don't feel like this would be foreign to me in the least. Community engagement is huge, as it is in Oak Park and should be in most places. It's not about a certain program, it's a philosophy. And one needs to employ the community to help with other crime-fighting efforts, as well as other instances where they would need public safety. I would just try to expound on the community efforts that have been started here so far, and try to develop that a little bit more by getting officers engaged at different events, parks, and other events that maybe recreation is putting on, just to engage the community a little more. While I was in Oak Park, there were several things that we did as far as open houses, coffee with a cop. We had an ice cream truck that we would take out, that I personally took out and handed out ice cream to the citizens that were out there. And it was just, it's a huge thing. People want to see the police, and the police are the most visible part of the city. And we need to make sure that officers are out there and engaging and friendly and helpful. And that is what I would like to expound on if I'm selected to come here.
Thank you.
Hey, Sam.
Councilman Ordell.
As a director, you might have to implement policies that may be good for the department and city, but may be unpopular with the employees. What would be your approach to handle a situation like this? Or can you give me an example in your experience where you had to take such an action?
Yeah, I don't think that that's unusual. But most things, I believe, come down to communication. And even if people are dissatisfied with a policy that comes down, they may not understand the reasons for that. And it's my belief that if a policy is coming down and needs to be implemented, there's a reason for that. And so I think if I'm able to get out in front of that and explain why it is that a particular policy is being enforced or implemented, that people are more likely to take initiative and take ownership of that, as opposed to trying to just push something on people when they don't understand potentially what that's about. I can't think of a specific policy in Oak Park that comes to mind, but I do know that there have been times when the directive has come down and people are, why do we have to do that? And it's a matter, again, of explaining it. And once people understand the reasoning behind it, they typically will get behind it, even if they don't necessarily agree with it. And the reality is, if that's what they're told to do, then that's what they're expected to do.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Chernak.
So, what challenges do you see on an individual level for yourself coming into the role of Director of Public Safety, and how would you address or overcome those challenges?
Well, the biggest challenge probably is that I'm an outsider, right? I mean, there's no secret there. A lot of directors have come up from within, and I know that this city has had most of the directors have been interim for a long time. I think this department is looking for stability, and I think the council is probably looking for some stability, which is why you're seeking to go outside. But I actually look at that as not necessarily an obstacle. I think that maybe I have a new perspective, a fresh set of eyes on the things that are going on in this city and this department, and I absolutely welcome that. I don't think that that's a challenge that can be overcome. I look forward to that. I've worked my entire career to get where I am today, leading me to the point where I am prepared to take on a department of my own. And I think that that's probably what the biggest challenge will be, is to come in from the outside and try to learn the culture and learn the people that work here and learn about this city and the community. And I welcome that with open arms. Thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Kolka.
Thank you. How do you pronunciate your last name?
Kretschmar.
Kretschmar, okay.
There's too many letters, I know.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure. Well, thank you, Ms. Kretschmar, for your amazing resume. It's excellent. Just to dovetail off of the last question, what does the first 90 days look like if you were to be hired in as the director of Fraser Public Safety?
The first thing I need to do is meet everybody that works here, from yourselves at council all the way down to the last volunteer. The first 90 days, I mean, I don't want to jump into the pool like a cannonball. It's about, getting your feet wet and coming in and seeing how things are here, and trying to see what works and maybe what doesn't work, and make incremental tweaks and changes as things go. But the first 90 days, I'm looking to talk to the command staff, the officers, to get their insight and opinions on what they think works and what doesn't work, as well as, like I said, the volunteers, and just try to figure out exactly what's going on here. I mean, policies and procedures need to be reviewed to make sure that they're up with modern standards. I'd like to look at training logs to see how the training is implemented in this city. And take a look at the personnel. How many people do we have here, and how does that work? Fraser's a little different than what I'm used to, because you have volunteer firefighters and people that are designated as paramedic EMTs, where I'm used to everybody being all cross-trained. So it's a little different here. I need to figure out your system, and again, make incremental changes where I think that they'd be the most beneficial. So looking at scheduling is one of the things, and again, talking to everybody here to see what's important.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I got a couple questions for you. I've worked for the Department of Public Safety for 34 years as a firefighter, and actually worked under 5 directors since I've been here. And during those good days, we call them good days, we had, MATs, motor carrier, SIU units, all kinds of different things, members on the SWAT teams. What do you think that you could do in the future to maybe bring some of those types of units back that help the officers, have more of a career than just being road officers and responding to fires when needed?
Right, I understand. And I'm no stranger to those things either. Like I said, when we went through the layoffs in Oak Park, we lost all of those things too. And it's a long road. It's a long haul back. I mean, a lot of things come down to budgetary issues, which is why those things were lost to begin with. So it is a matter of seeing what money is available, where things maybe can be moved. Is there more money and training than is necessary, or equipment? Where are we going to utilize the money the best? I think that the best thing for a department is to have that diversity in these different units that are available to officers. That would be a draw for recruitment as well. If you can say, hey, you work here a couple of years, you can work in SID or SIU or whatever acronyms you want to use for different things, traffic units and whatnot. So it is, again, a matter of looking at the personnel and seeing what we can afford, and if we have enough people to separate them into particular units and get them out there. I think the community would love that. And certainly the officers that work here would love that because that's going to give them an opportunity to do something else. And I understand that greatly. I have the resume I do because I was afforded opportunity to do these things, and it has developed me professionally. And I think that's huge, that officers need to be developed. They need to work. I mean, most of us get in this line of work because we want to work, not and have some diversity and have other things to do. So, to answer your question, it comes down to personnel and money. And I have to explore those things and see what I can make happen. But I would love nothing more than to be as diverse within the department as possible. And particularly like adding things that you haven't mentioned, like, peer support groups and things like that. So there's a lot of opportunity that's out there. And I welcome all of that and hope to be able to restore as much of that as I can and add more.
Okay. My follow-up to that is, working under these 5 directors, I've seen totally different mentalities and positions on different items and stuff that we deal with on a daily basis. What's your real position on some of the reserve programs, such as paid on-call firefighters, the junior explorers, reserve officers? How do you feel about those?
Well, I feel like we should utilize that more. Unfortunately, Oak Park doesn't utilize many of those things, and I think that that's a downside there. If you can have paid on-call firefighters to help supplement the people that you already have here, and they're well-trained and they want to be here, then why not? Why not use them, or why not even expand on that if you can? My only concern with that is that, that maybe they would want to leave and go to a fire department somewhere else. But again, if they're getting the training they want here and they're getting, they have equipment that is top-notch stuff, then perhaps they'd like to stay. As far as explorers, I mean, again, there's no better recruiting tool than to actually have young people in here to see how public safety works, see how the department is, get to meet everybody, and hopefully come up on their own and want to work here and stay. So, and the same thing with reserve officers. Again, I don't have experience with having reserve officers, but if we can have more people in uniform out in the public at events and handling things of that nature, what better recruitment tool is that than officers being out in the field, engaging with the public, having a positive experience with them, and drawing people in. So I am not opposed to that at all. On the contrary, I think those are good ideas.
Okay. Thank you. Councilwoman Baranski.
Yes, hello. One of the questions we talked about, it's going to be a duplicate from the separate interview that we talked about, and I don't think we've talked about it yet, but it would be what factors you would consider as it pertains to the city of Fraser when figuring out budgeting, staffing, overtime, equipment needs. And I know you haven't obviously done a deep dive, but what do you see are opportunities or areas for Fraser to maximize budgets, and how would you go about handling all of that?
Well, I think we have to utilize some money that is out there, like JAG grants, or, now we have ARPA funds that, maybe that's done and over with, but I think we need to do a better job, and I don't mean like you haven't done a good job, but I'm saying professionally, utilizing money that is out there from state grants or federal grants, and looking at where we have our money budgeted now to see where the best place is to utilize that. Where can we give and take? I mean, can we do a little less with equipment, or can we, use this car a little longer and try to stretch out the money as much as possible, while again trying to utilize grants and free money that's out there from the government.
Was there any considerations you had in terms of determining staffing levels, overtime, those kind of cost savings or things like that?
Sure. Again, I would have to look at how the staffing is. I have experience working 8-hour shifts as well as 12-hour shifts. I've been on a 12-hour shift, a 12-hour rotation for a long time, and Often, that also can be used as a recruitment tool because young people like to have time off, and 12-hour shifts affords that. It doesn't matter their seniority level. They get every other weekend off, and so that is good for recruitment purposes. It also may afford more coverage because people are here a little bit longer. Again, I would have to look and see what the numbers are and how they play out. But to make a change in scheduling from 8s to 10s or 12s may give us more personnel at a particular time than the 8s do. It may also save on overtime. It may not. Again, it depends on the numbers. You typically can keep people for 16 hours. So if they're already here for 12 regularly, they just have another 4 as opposed to working a double, back-to-back 8-hour shifts. But the scheduling is a big thing that I would like to look at and see if we are utilizing our people the best way possible and staying within budgetary constraints.
Councilwoman Blanky.
Thank you. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm well, thank you.
You have a very diverse, a very accomplished resume. You are like, you came up, started at the ground floor and you have worked your way up with very few, I didn't see any exception to what I would regard important to public safety that you yourself haven't experienced. You come with that background, but also recognition and awards and all that. That being said, the only thing I didn't see on here was what is your experience with politics in a city? I looked and looked and looked, but as you well know, you didn't get to where you are today without experiencing something. And I guess what I'm just simply asking, you certainly are aware of the undertow of it all and all that. Have you had experience in that kind of a environment?
I have had some experience with politics. I'm not sure exactly how far, what direction you're really referring to, but I have had a great deal of experience with our city manager, Eric Tungate, and he's done a fantastic job bringing our city back from the depths of despair and into a place that is really doing well. I was part of the command officers labor. I was on the union board, and so I had a lot of experience dealing with the city manager as well as human resources and a few council people dealing with labor relations and negotiations and things like that. So I had a great working relationship with our city manager, and not just regarding labor relations, but just everyday contacts. In fact, he is one of the references that I listed. And I have had experience with the council members as well. We've done a bunch of community things, and council people are there. During COVID, we did COVID parades like crazy, and a lot of council people made themselves available. They come to a lot of the community events. I was also involved, this is pretty political, after the murder of George Floyd. There was a huge demonstration in Oak Park with hundreds of people. And I was tasked actually with running that detail of our officers that were working that. And, it was pretty tense out there. And our officers were out there and meeting with the people that were there, and they had bullhorns, and they asked us questions, and they put us on video, and what do you think about this, and what do you think about that? And it really could have gone off the rails. It did not, thankfully. It went on for hours. They shut down Coolidge from 9 Mile to 10 Mile for a period of time to March, and we allowed that to happen, and so long as things were peaceful, and we engaged them. And there was conversation back and forth, which was awesome. And, you get to give a different perspective. I mean, people have an idea of certain things, and it's about dialogue and communication. And so, I have limited exposure or experience with politics, for sure. I don't consider myself a politician. I consider myself a public safety professional. And my goal is the safety of the public and professional excellence. But I understand that in this role, politics is part of it. And I welcome that too, or I would not be here today. I think I can do that. I like to talk to people. I like to have dialogue. I like communication. And I think so long as those things are open and available, that I won't have any issues or problems with that whatsoever.
Well, first of all, I apologize for not bringing more clarity to my question, because I realize as a lieutenant, you were sort of buffered within a union and within, where, but you gave me the right answer that I was looking for. You have
goodness.
seen it, and what you said was, I'm not a politician, I'm a career professional, and I assure you, at times, it's a far nobler career that you follow. I just wanted to bring it to light because it's a reality. I mean, it is a reality. It's a learned experience. Changes constantly, and I was so, again, I'm being repetitive. However, your career is in public safety. Your career is as a professional. And because it can, like you said, it can be, you can sugarcoat it and say, yeah, some days are really enjoyable and you interact and blah, blah. But most of us up here really are not, I can speak for myself and a couple others, that we're not politicians. Small town, we would like to regard it as a service. We would like to regard it as an interest. Hobby would be a real stretch.
Started as a hobby.
But
Not a hobby.
just to nip one pearl too, right? Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that forward. That you have touched on that, because certainly, as the director, you are where the buck stops.
Absolutely.
And you know that,
I sure
and you
do.
just told me that, and that's exactly what I was searching for. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilwoman Coco.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one follow-up question, just kind of as this has kind of gone on. If you were hired in with regard to our Director of Public Safety, sorry, I'm having trouble, I guess. Don't laugh at me.
Sorry.
So I look at your resume, right, and I'm incredibly impressed. But what I want to know is what attributes, what assets do you feel you have that would be a good fit, that you would be able to bring here, that would, that you could expand upon based on the multitude of experience and amazing resume that you have? Do you understand my question?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
I'm not sure I do, but
Confused, but good.
in other words, I want to know, what do you think would set you apart from, other candidates based on who you are as a person, what you're bringing to the table, what you've accomplished, that you'd be a good fit for us, for Fraser?
Well, I have a well-rounded background. No doubt about that. There's always room for improvement. I strive to learn
Glad I didn't
more
ask.
and get as much training, education, and experience as I can. But what I bring to you is, again, a very well-rounded person. I have done a lot of things. There's more that I'd like to do. I've worked my entire adult life to get where I am today. And I don't know what credentials the other candidates have, but I can tell you that I have a heck of a work ethic. I'm not looking to retire. I'm looking to further my career. I like dealing with people. I like talking to people. I like being out with people. I feel like I am a half-decent communicator. I bring a high level of integrity with me. And, I lead by example, and I expect other supervisors to do that as well. I come from a community not so different than this one. And I just think that the timing is right. Again, I applied here, like I said, I was interested in Fraser more than 25 years ago. And I could not have picked the timing of this any better had I picked it. I'm ready to leave Oak Park. I am leaving Oak Park. And, you know, and I know several people that have worked here. I know people that have grown up here and gone to high school here. And everybody talks about what a bedroom community this is and how tight it is and how they love their public safety. And I felt loved and appreciated in Oak Park too, and I want to bring that with me. I'm ready to hit the ground running and do everything I can to make this a better place to work. And I can tell you that I bring you 110%. And public safety is my passion. I absolutely love it. It has been the last 28 years I've been doing this. And, you know, it's not just the police side of it, although I love that, the fire side of it as well. And I have a great deal of experience in that as well. And this department actually separates things a little bit. And so I really want to get in and understand that a little bit better. But I can tell you that I will come here and work for you every day and do everything I can to make this a better place to be.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that answer.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay. Do you have any other questions for us?
I do not have any questions, but I would just like to thank you again for giving me this opportunity. It's been quite the process, culminating into this. So I look forward to hearing from you in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll have a decision by next Thursday, because that is the question, at the latest. If not, yeah, at the very latest. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, you can.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
Thank you. Be safe.
I'd see this. I never thought I'd see this. I've been a woman, and I enjoyed.
Councilwoman Bransky.
Well, I hope that everyone can appreciate the amazing caliber of the candidates that we have willowed it down to. I learned more today. I thought, oh, there's no way I'm going to, not know everything. I thought I would just sit here and was literally on the edge of my seat with each of the candidates, learning different things. And I hope that you all share those sentiments that, to me, we would be well served with any of the four candidates serving in this role. And I just want to, start the conversation by thanking, obviously, the city manager and Sarah for getting us these candidates, and thanking my two fellow council people for doing the legwork to, in my opinion, present four candidates who could all do the job and blow away any other department. So I'm just going to lead with that.
I agree. I concur.
No, actually, I said I couldn't sit on your guys' panel, and then reviewing the resumes. Seeing it on paper is one thing, but seeing it in person is another thing. And I've always been a people person to do that, so it's made a pretty big impact. I think you guys did a great job.
We tried.
Councilwoman Coca.
Yeah, no, you did. You did a great job. I can't say enough, so thank you. And everyone up here had great questions, so we really got to know each of these candidates fairly well. And this is going to be a very difficult decision, I'm not going to lie. I mean, this is going to be very difficult. And I have a two top that I really like, and I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I mean, I'm going to say who I like, and we'll go from there. So I like Robert Tripiano, and I like Samantha Kretschmar. Those are the two that I like the best. I think those are the two that will have proven themselves based on their resume and based on their interview today. I think they hit the ground running. I think they bring a lot to the table. And I mean, I think either one of them is going to serve our city very, very well. I mean, very well. And I think both, like I said, both of them, their resumes were outstanding. And so that's where I'm at with that.
Anybody else?
Well, I guess, let me ask a question. Well, I didn't know if everybody wants to say who their two tops are, or if we are just making a motion, because I know who I would make a motion for, because I agree, we had 4 great candidates. We really did. I think they all definitely could do the job. I think they all bring a little bit different nuance to the position. I do believe that our current staff is going to really help them and get them where, up to speed on how Fraser works, but at the same time, I feel that they have enough independency to not fall into as people like to say, the good old boys club. I think, bringing their new ideas, I don't feel like anybody's going to come in like a bull in a china shop. I feel like they're going to come in, they're going to see how Fraser runs things. They're going to find those tweaks, as Samantha said. I liked the word tweak. And then kind of move forward. But based on resume, based on the testing, based on even this evening, even though I've interviewed most of them ahead of time, if it were me and my thought processes, I would pick Samantha. I would make a motion to offer Samantha the job this evening. That's my thought process.
Councilwoman Sutherland.
I like both your methods. As a temperature check, I think it might be a good idea to talk about top 2, just to kind of see where everybody's.
My top 2, surprisingly, are the same as hers.
So my top 2 are Scott Rohr. I think he did a fantastic job, and I was really impressed by the amount of homework that he did in preparing for both interviews. But then my other would be Samantha. I think that she did a phenomenal job.
Can't hear you. I can't hear.
Samantha, Scott, and Samantha.
Oh, you're saying good things.
Yes,
Glad he
Yeah,
said
so
that.
I was what I was saying was that, my top 2 would be Scott Rohr and then Samantha Kretschmar. I think that Scott Rohr did a great job preparing for his initial interview that we had with him as a subcommittee, and the amount of legwork that he did to look into our current staffing and our overtime and talking about his thoughts on community involvement. I mean, he just really impressed me, which is why I asked the same question tonight that I had asked in the initial interview, because I was hoping to get the same answer. And I don't want to say it was a trick, but it was kind of a trick, right? Because I wanted to see if that was true and if he could do it again, and he did. And I think he knocked it out of the park. But, I mean, obviously, Samantha, she has that experience from Oak Park, which is very similar to Fraser, and she has an amazing resume and background, and her answers were phenomenal also. So, yeah, those are definitely my top 2.
And I love they're all passionate still.
Yes.
I didn't hear you.
It was Aurora and Samantha.
Okay, thank you.
Scott and Samantha.
Okay.
Councilman Odell.
Yeah, this is an extremely hard decision because all of them bring something to the table that's a little bit different than each other. We got someone that's been in the city for years and years and years. We got somebody that runs a small department and makes most out of what they can make out of. We got 2 that have extensive public safety experience, so they know how it operates. I think I would agree with Ms. Sutherland. The way I would like to see it, and maybe we can come to a consensus tonight, is top 2, and then if we have a consensus on the top 2, then rank 1 and 2, and discuss it from there. But I like Scott and Samantha as well. They stick out just because they have the public safety experience. They seem to have, I don't think you can go wrong with either one of them, to be honest with you. And I did like the amount of preparation Scott did. Samantha has a lot of experience with a very similar size city, and she's kind of done it all as well. So those would be my top 2. Nothing against the other guys, because I think they all did great. It's just, if I got my gut feeling, those are my top 2.
I can honestly say I really haven't decided yet, because
Yeah.
Mike has not decided yet.
oh, I'm sorry. I just really have to go through it some more. something else I probably need to look into myself. But I'm just not ready to make that choice yet.
Well, I'm sorry, are you done?
I'm done. I'm done. It's.
My top two would match up with what Councilwoman Kalka said, you know. However, the one thing that stops me is the fact that Sam has the fire training. You know, there's nothing on this that she hasn't done. I mean, as far as terrorist, as far as diversity, I mean, just living in Royal Oak is diverse, and, right?
Oak Park.
Well, they're close enough.
Yeah.
No, seriously, if you kind of
The one
really
thing she hasn't
do-
done was live in Royal Oak. We didn't ask her, we don't know, she might
Yeah,
have.
she might have.
Might have.
No, but I was very, as I said, I mean, for me to draw that question that I did about politics, and I know, and yet I feel it's important to that person that, you know, if we hire, you know, that there's a relationship and an understanding of who they are and who we are, you know. And I think that's what put me over the edge, was the fact that she said her career is in public safety. Nothing to do with this, you know, that's her career. And again, so she's my number one, Samantha.
Okay, so I have a hard time ranking them because even though the reality is it's the city that drew these candidates. We didn't do it. And so as much as I'm like so happy and like overfilled with joy, it's a testament to the residents and the business leaders and our employees that these candidates want to come and work here. And so I would be remiss if I didn't thank them up front, because I should have started there. And so I apologize for not giving credit where credit was due. To me, when I piece it all together, and the final piece came today with learning the differences in the cities. And when I look at Robert Tripriano versus the two with PSO experience, as much as I very much agree that, yes, we already have a great base here, the fact that we can get a PSO, that tips the scale away from Robert. And then when I look at, this is my brain processing it, and then when I look between Samantha and Scott, and I hear for the first time how similar Oak Park is to Fraser, and knowing that Fraser is becoming even more diverse and having more challenges with residents not being able to afford water or all kinds of things, not just water. That was a Freudian slip. To me, with the broader exposure to the diverse group of residents, the diverse group of police encounters that she's going to have experienced because of the community that she's from, not counting her resume, she too took the time, investigated, and the tipping point for me, she was at a city that went through exactly what Fraser went through. And I'm assuming, I didn't get a chance to ask it, I bet it was at right about the same time, and experienced exactly what this department experienced, and has experienced growing back from that. That's invaluable, and so Samantha's my number one.
I'll tell you honestly, one thing that's got me puzzled to myself is I was so impressed with Robert, but not having the fire stuff. But we have such a capable fire captain now that's young, and I know he's going to take the fire division and the paid on call to a new level. I've had conversations with him. So I'm not actually as worried about the fire as I was before this all started, to be honest with you. You can tell by my questions. And that's why I'm just got to debate with myself. because I'm not going to be around long. So what's going to be the best way for the city to go forward for myself?
Can I ask you a question, and it's not meant to be offensive, but are you gonna vote? Or, not that I don't want your opinion, I obviously want your opinion.
That's why I wanted opinion again.
Yeah, I 100% want your
Mr.
opinion.
Denault.
Yeah. Oh, you asked him,
No,
well,
I haven't asked him yet.
Oh.
I just want to make sure it's all, I mean, I'd like to vote, but if it all depends
oh,
on,
okay, you just always have
right.
recused
internal.
yourself for all of the prior issues when we chose these
Anything
kind of
internal,
issues.
I have to because I'm a direct subordinate of them. I don't, this is.
And I'm not saying you need to,
Right.
by
No,
any
I
means.
understand. This would turn into that, so that's why I'm a little,
Right. I got it. You're just not
So
sure.
you just want Don's blessing to vote?
yes, and if I don't, then I don't have a problem, but I'd like to relay my positions to you guys and how I
100%.
felt.
Yeah, I didn't mean
No,
to
no,
cut you.
absolutely.
Yeah, because I want to hear, whether you vote or don't vote, I want your opinions, especially because you
That's why
have,
I just said what I said, because
I guess I didn't hear you say you wanted Don's opinion before I just asked that question, so that might have been
I
before.
didn't get the.
Okay, then my motion was premature. So, but
So your motion's what?
I guess my motion was premature. Because I actually made a motion.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
it's not premature.
No, so
I have my light on. I'm
I have
waiting.
my,
to
I
be
have my
called
light on too.
I'm waiting to be called on.
He wasn't done with his opinion. Let him finish his opinion. We've all had ours. Go ahead.
Suzanne Kalka.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. I was just gonna say, before all that was going on over there, it's not disrespectful, it's just, I didn't know that this was the way it was gonna go, because I was gonna say that it seems like every single one of us has Samantha in their top two. So let's cut to the chase. You want to vote? Go ahead. You don't, it looks like we've got the votes to do it. So let's do it and move on. Your call. You want to abstain?
I can't stop anyone from making a motion to do it, and
Well, then I'll make a motion
I would
to,
just abstain from the vote.
I already made the motion.
then
I just
I'll
need a second.
second it.
And I will abstain then from the,
I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful to what you
it's
want to
not.
do.
It's
I
not.
just want to make sure we're moving the process along here.
I will not
That's all.
take it as disrespect.
Okay.
I just wanted, I was hoping to let you guys know my positions after the
We
fact
respect that,
to do
100%.
that, so.
If your position is that you want to abstain and you think
Well,
that's,
I've done them all so far. I didn't get it on the committee because of that reason, so. I
that's
should-
probably best to
I
then.
should probably-
Okay.
Follow suit.
The light's still on.
I know we're,
I'm just
Sorry.
making
I
sure.
have to let the other people finish.
Okay.
I'm finished. I've said everything I need to say.
Might have to bring these two up, they're way too similar.
Oh, good God. Okay, go ahead.
I
Councilwoman
wouldn't let
Sutherland.
us vote without you being heard, I promise.
Okay, because I know you.
I
can
would,
see
when the
my
lights
light
are,
from where you're
I
sitting.
did, and I wouldn't let it go on.
I promise you'd see.
I may not like what you say, but I'll let you talk.
No, I'm just gonna play Don tonight and say that I would ask that you provide clarification in your motion to exactly what you are motioning and that we go from there. I get it, but it wasn't extreme, it wasn't super clear, so that's all I was gonna say.
My motion
Okay.
is to direct the city manager and the assistant city manager to offer the position to Samantha
The position of what?
of Director of Public Safety. I wasn't finished. I was like, I'm building up dramatic pause here, okay? But anyway, yes, I would direct them to offer the position of Public Safety Director to Samantha. And I'm going to mess up her last name, so I'm not going to bother. Thank you, Kretschmar. Yeah. It doesn't look that way, but
And I
yes.
still second your motion.
Is that more clarification for you?
Yes, that was good.
Okay.
He wasn't here, so I had to do that.
Oh, no, you're fine.
It's the pre-lawyer, that's what it is, the pre-lawyer.
Yeah.
Okay.
it is.
then, but should I make a motion to have you approve my abstaining, or you just all verbally? Okay.
I don't think we have to do that.
I don't think so either.
Does anybody object? Does anybody object to the mayor abstaining from this vote? Anybody object? Please say yes.
I don't.
Okay? Everybody's fine.
So we have a motion on the floor,
And a second.
and a second on the floor.
Call roll call vote?
Any,
Only if you require it.
yeah,
I would like a roll call vote.
Okay.
Gotta go first.
no, you made the motion, you have to.
Okay.
Oh, then yes, if council's wishes to have a roll call vote, I have no problem with that. So would you, if you would please.
I just have to tell you, I just want to be sure I'm doing this correctly.
Okay.
You are going to.
He is abstaining.
Yes. So I have done it both ways. I've done roll call where when I come to your name, you say abstain, or is that how
Yes.
you'd like me to proceed?
Yes. That's why it's official.
We are ready.
Historically, what-
I think we are.
Okay.
Yes, okay.
Wait, I have to ask, is there any comments or questions?
Oh,
from the
yes,
audience?
yes, yes.
Yes, wait, yes. The people who are on there, because look, our one person who is always here is
The
here.
the resident,
The
the resident,
resident.
resident.
The resident.
No one's raised their
Okay,
hand?
I would assume that.
okay,
So
thank you.
we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Branson,
Yes.
Councilmember Blanky,
Yes.
Mayor Carnegie,
Abstain.
Councilmember Kolka,
Yes.
Councilmember Odell,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Shornick,
Yes.
and Councilmember Sutherland.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Welcome.
Congratulations.
And you know what, and I just want to say, I appreciate everybody's input up here, and you, and again, just, I want to reiterate, because I don't want any of the people who came to think that they all really just did a great
Oh,
job.
they were
and
outstanding.
And I'm just so grateful for them wanting to come and serve this community and them having a vested interest in Fraser, and thank them all, truly.
Yes, and it was very close. I mean.
It was,
really
yeah,
very
there was a,
It literally could have. This tonight, yeah.
yes, so.
Difficult decisions like this are a blessing.
It was.
Right.
It was.
It was,
Exactly right.
I'm so happy it was so hard.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
what you want.
that is exactly what I want. Like, I couldn't be more pleased with
And-
literally the upset stomach I have. Like,
Yeah,
Wow.
because
no, like, because it was
No doubt.
literally like,
Yeah.
I mean, great things brought by every one of them. And honestly, and, for the people who are here, and for Eric, he had some great ideas, and I genuinely hope that he works with Samantha to bring those really great, and I believe he will, because
will.
he's a consummate professional, so I think it's going to be great. What? Oh, yeah. So I don't know, I'm very happy with, I think our community is really going to benefit.
It's amazing the reputation our community has.
right.
Oh.
Hi.
Oh!
Oh, well, welcome to the party.
And I didn't hear what you were saying, but my phone started blowing up. And
So you knew there was a, well, either way, I guess. You want to read back the motion, Miss? No, we just voted unanimously to
Offer the
negotiate a
position.
contract with you. Or, I'm sorry, a position.
And I abstain because I work for the Public Safety Department, and you would be.
And he's abstained to everything anyway.
Yes. Not because it was you, he was abstaining no matter who the vote
Was.
was.
But I've been president of the firefighters for 30-some years, so I'll be glad to talk to you anytime.
so you have more experience than I do.
I have a lot of experience.
He just talks
He
really
forgets some
low,
of
so
it,
you gotta
but he's
listen
okay.
in.
We
I'm kind of stiff and.
we look forward to working with you, and I think,
We apologize
yes.
for that. Oh, wait, you gotta hold the
oh,
microphone,
yeah, the mic,
Microphone.
because we're on television, so he can't.
On actual television.
yeah. Yeah, because that mic is
You will quickly learn, he's the boss.
of that, but yeah.
I thought I said it already. No.
We just want the residents to hear it.
I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and to speak in front of you and put my credentials out there and put myself out there and hope that you can get to know me and, well, you will, right? Get to know me.
Yes.
And I'm just so appreciative. I think that I'm going to be good for this department and this city. And if I'm not, you'll tell me. And I have every intention of making myself present well and making this department as professional as I can. And I'm just very thankful that you've given me the opportunity, so.
Well, welcome. We
thank
look
you.
forward to it.
Welcome, congratulations, and
Congratulations.
now you and your son both have something to celebrate.
Yes.
That's right.
Super fun night.
Which son are we talking about?
One got in the
When
award
was the
tonight,
tank?
right?
What was the award tonight?
Oh, tonight, actually, there's a gentleman in Oak Park. His name is Gary Torgo. He lives there, and he's a chairman of Huntington National Bank. And he's been a lifelong Oak Park resident, and
That's awesome.
his he's lived there his whole life, through law school and all of that, and he's got 4 children, and they all live in Oak Park, and they have children, and anyway, the point of the story is he does a scholarship every year, and he's done it for the last 6 years now, to honor the children of Oak Park police officers who are in college, and so.
Oh, that's
He
nice.
gives a scholarship, and he puts on this great presentation every year with, food, and he's extended it the last 2 years to include the Hero Fund is what he chooses to call it, and just the philanthropy that he has put forward to us because he appreciates our public safety department. And that's why I say to you, I know what it's like to feel loved by a community, and that family specifically. So actually I have 2 sons that are in college. My oldest has graduated, thankfully, but I still have 2. Well, my youngest is going to be a freshman at Cornell. He's leaving in about 10 days. And my middle son is a senior at Alma. And so they were both given the award today. And so each year, one of the students speaks, a thankful, speech to everybody, the whole department's out there, any city members, and certainly the Torgo family. And both of my sons actually spoke tonight. So I appreciate you accommodating that. I would have skipped it, of course. But
Can't miss
thank you
those
again for
moments.
that.
You don't get those back.
Family first.
Family first.
Always.
We're all parents up here,
Like
so.
I said, I appreciate it.
You can participate
Yep.
one way or the other.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
So
Congratulations.
Well, we look forward to you jumping in.
fix it all.
Should we show you your desk? No, just kidding.
Kretschmar?
Yeah, I hope so.
Smart.
I'm just gonna
More
call her
letters.
Sam. It's just way easier.
Say the
You
word.
take out the Z and the S, Kretschmar. Okay. Too many letters. See,
I
that's
wonder
what
why they add all those
not
extra
hard.
letters when it's really not in the, yeah. I get different names every
Try.
day.
We need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.
Night.